Really? Really? I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't hear anything. Were you guys able to hear anything? I couldn't hear anything. Nothing. I heard nothing. That was crazy. What the heck was that? What was that? I couldn't hear anything. We need to hear stuff. We're definitely going to need to hear stuff. I don't know. All right. Let's see if this will work better. Well, we're going to try something. We're going to try something new here. We'll try something new.
Okay, Candace, let's do a take and just be mindful of the pronunciations. Let's not do anything weird.
I have so many explosive revelations to share with you.
Oh, wait. No, it's revelations. You know what? We can move on.
You got if you can't compartmentalize.
No, sweetheart, it's compartmentalize. Just take that one more time.
You have to be able to compartmentalize that.
Compartmentalize.
And we have to compartmentalize. Compartmentalize how you feel about somebody personally.
Are you doing this on purpose? Is this a bit? Are you trying to get clicks or something?
Can't compartmentalize, but really, it was about the architecture.
Oh, this is the big one. It's architecture.
You just like the architecture.
Architecture, not architecture.
Love the architecture.
Architecture.
Yeah, no, like he loved the architecture of things.
You really don't know how these words are pronounced? You speak for a living.
Prince Harry abdicates England, causes this whole race kerfluffle.
Oh, no, it's kerfuffle.
We knew a kerfluffle happened.
Kerfuffle.
Because this dress kerfluffle.
Pronounced kerfuffle. Kerfuffle.
Designed quite literally with the intention to mock me and Tucker Carlson. It's always got to be Tucker Carlson, Cameron Owens.
It's Candace Owens. It's Candace. Let's cut here. I'm gonna go take my life. Okay, Candace.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the following program. I am your host, Joe Neerman, aka Good Logic. I hope you all had a phenomenal weekend. I was down in sunny Florida setting brand new records for lows in temperatures. It's an amazing ability, right? Like to have cold weather just follow you. Like I'm like literally that Frost character from that Christmas movie that you've all seen like 100 times, and I saw half of it once. The blue character, there's a blue character, right? There's a blue character who's like everywhere he goes, it's like cold. I guess I could have updated that by like referencing, I don't know, Frozen, but no, I go back to my youth, and I don't mind showing you that these gray hairs are well earned. Yes, record lows, the lowest it's been in Florida in 50 years. That's what I got to experience. Literally frozen iguanas. It's kind of creepy, kind of weird when you just see, because they fall out of the trees because it's so cold. When it gets below 40, they just, what is that? When it gets below 40, they just plop and lay there. Normally, they're fast little critters. They're just all over the place. Pretty silent, but fast little critters. When it's below 40, they just and lay there. That's what happens. They just, and you got like a field of iguanas just laying there. So that's kind of weird and unsettling. But I guess you don't see that every day, so it's something to see. But it was cold. It was cold. Not as cold as it was here, I hear tell. But so, and then Saturday night, because, whether I'm home or on the road, I'm not doing work on Saturdays. So Saturday night, I'm going through my feed, and I was just like, oh my God, if I was doing a show tonight, there is like 1,000 things that I can cover. I was just sort of like putting things aside for you, really, for this moment right here. And it was for this moment right here and now that I was putting things aside. So what do we have tonight? Well, you're probably aware of the fact that there was a massive dump of like 3 million files from the old Epstein thing. There was this guy, Jeffrey Epstein. You might not have heard of him. It was a guy, it was a billionaire. He was involved in a scandal or half a dozen of them. And yeah, very gross, sick individual. A lot of files, people want them released. They got released. So, well, many of them. Still a lot out there, supposedly. but a whole mess of them. When you're talking about 3 million files, that's a lot of files. And the internet has been pouring over them, trying to basically figure out who's in the Epstein files. And it ended up playing probably better for Trump than most Trump fans were expecting. Or I guess maybe it played about what they expected. I guess it played about what they expected. The left is trying to drum up that his name is referenced in the Trump and the Epstein files 38,000 times or some stupid thing like that. But it actually ended up playing out pretty well from him. I'm going to definitely be covering that. You also probably heard Don Lemon finally arrested. They hauled him in. So I want to have a little gander at that, discuss the whole Don Lemon arrests. What are the prospects for actually getting conviction of Don Lemon based on the charges that were brought? What else we got? There was basically Los Angeles is all of, and California is just basically on fire right now because of ice coming there, as did Nick Shirley. Nick Shirley basically has now become an instant celebrity, and wherever he goes, people are afraid that their daycares are under investigation. So that happened this weekend, and then you got the Clintons and their whole thing. There's a lot going on. Plus, I got a whole bunch of other side stories, like side little stories. I was like, I can't like updates about weird things going on with the squad, or hearing Jake Tapper whine about Trump's $10 billion lawsuit against the federal government, and hearing him cry about that, which is to me hilarious. There's just a lot that I got to cover tonight. So that's why I was like, I don't know if I'm going to have to fit all this in a 2-hour show. I can fit it into a 2-hour show. I can do that, but I'm going to set a goal so I can really, really, pound in on some of these stories, really dig in there on some of these stories where I have, if we hit our goal is our nightly goal of having 15 or more super chats, rumble rants, locals, donos, or whatever of $10 or more pop. That if we hit 15 of those, I will be doing a 3-hour show tonight. You and me. So send the love, and we will certainly, I guess we'll spend more time here. I guess that's what it is. I guess that's how this whole thing breaks down. Anyhow, so that's where we're starting off. Tonight. I apologize for the early boomerism. Not really sure how that went down the way it did, but it did, and we're going to move on from there. There is one quick thing, because I like starting with good news. I like starting with good news, and I have some good news for you. Out of the gate before I even get to any super chats, because I like coming in here. I feel like people come to me for because I'm very much a white pill. In reality, like in real life, not just when I'm doing this. I happen to be someone who has a very positive perspective about what the future holds. I think that's you have a much happier life. And this is a philosophy that I freely share and encourage you to embrace. A lot of people are very negative, and they feel like if I expect the worst, I'm going to end up being happier when it's not as bad as I'm expecting it. This is what I have seen as a common philosophy, certainly amongst Gen Xers, and I assume amongst younger generations as well. Like, they expect the worst. They expect it's going to rain. They expect their team's going to lose. They expect that, someone's going to make a terrible error. They're expecting that there's going to be some loss or some cheating that's going to steal from them in an election. They're always expecting the worst. And then they feel like this way, when it happens, I'll be better prepared for it emotionally to deal with it, or something like that. That's generally the mindset that I hear. This is a foolish perspective. You may do this, and I'm not saying you're a fool. I understand why people feel as if it's insulating them. This is not a way to have a happy life. That is how you have a miserable life. That is how you have a very, very, and unnecessarily miserable life. Seriously, an unnecessarily miserable life, because then when the disappointing things happens, you're really not any more shielded. You're not. You're just as ticked off. Trust me, when I saw what went down after the 2020 elections, and my wife, hardcore rooting, okay, she's has this kind of philosophy of okay, if Expect the worst. That I'm not going to be disappointed. She wasn't more bothered by than I was. She wasn't more protected from like the frustration of it. So instead, it's just months and months and months of like, wow, I hope nothing terrible happens in the election. And me saying like, I think it's gonna be okay. I think it's gonna be okay. We don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen. Not Nostradamus. I think it's gonna work out. And it doesn't work out. So if I was saying the whole time, oh man, I know it's not gonna work out. I know it's not gonna work out. The momentary satisfaction of I knew it wasn't going to work out doesn't make you feel any better. You just end up feeling miserable all the time. And then it's like, oh, phew, thank God. When it doesn't fall apart in a terrible way, you're like, oh, phew, thank God it didn't. We just spent the last couple of months like all worried about something that never even happened. So that's why my advice, I urge you, if that is you, if you feel like I was describing you with the whole, expecting the worst, to sort of gird yourself from like some terrible news coming in the future. This is all you're doing is making yourself miserable, and you're no more girded. You are not any more girded than if you're just like, you know what? I know that there could be something terrible that happen. I really hope and think it's going to work out well. You actually have a happier day to day, because the moment that something actually happens, that pinnacle moment, that moment comes and goes. But the whole build up to it, the journey up to it, can either suck because you're dreading it and expecting terrible things to happen, or it could be like hopeful, like, oh yeah, things are gonna be good. And you're just a happier life. It's a much happier life. So I urge you, if you think I was describing you there, I wasn't passing judgment on you. I was urging you to reconsider your whole approach, because I think it doesn't benefit me. You could ignore me. You could tune me out, say, yeah, Joe, you're an idiot, and just tune me out, keep going about your business. It doesn't change anything for me. My life is the same for me. It's for you. So I urge you for yourself. Your life has too much value to make it self-miserable. And it is self-misery. So don't be like that. I don't know why I got started talking about that, but my voice doesn't sound like it's in good. I don't feel like I'm in good throat today. Sounds like a little hoarse or whiny. I don't know. Yeah. Sometimes I find good throat in the middle of the show, if I have a coughing spasm sometime during the course of the show, it's probably a good thing that it's like I'm clearing out into getting into like good voice. So don't like call 911 or anything like that. It's probably a good thing. And yeah, so I know why I brought this up, because I said I want to start off with some good news, because I'm a glass half full kind of guy, and I like starting off with good news. So this is news that most of you who've been longtime followers of the show, most of you will consider it to be very good news. I got a new screen I want to try out here. New screen. Check this out. I'm liking it. You see that? A little in handheld. I can't tell you how terrible this looks in handheld. I'm looking at this in the portrait version. Landscape, this looks great. In portrait version is like a little skinny thing where you see like just 2/3 of my face. It's terrible in portrait. If you're watching on X right now, this is terrible. This is awful. Oh, you're like, what the hell am I looking at? You should be really in the ghetto. You should be in Rumble, or you should be in YouTube. You shouldn't be watching on X. I can't help you. The only reason I'm sharing with you guys on X is really so you'll eventually like come on over to like YouTube or Rumble, where like the cool kids hang out.
I wanted to take a look.
This is the good news. I promise good news. I start with good news. Here's your good news.
At some long-term population trends that really should set off a flashing red siren to Democrats nationwide, while bringing a big smile to the faces of Republicans nationwide. Why do I say that? Because take a look at the big population gainers versus the last census back in 2020. According to the latest population estimates that take into account the population mid-2025, look at this. The biggest population growth this decade, all 5 of the states that Donald John Trump won in 2024. Texas, Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, and of course the great state of Arizona, where I spent my New Year's Eve. I love those folks out in Prescott, Arizona. These were the biggest gainers the biggest gainers in terms of population compared to the 2020 census. Now, it's not just a red state boom. This is what we're looking at. We're looking at a red state boom here, but it is not just a red state boom. We're also looking at what I would dare call a blue state depression, because who are the people? Who and where are the people moving from into the red states? Well, they're blue states. They're blue states. Take a look here. The lowest domestic net migration this decade. All 5 of the states that were won by Kamala Harris in.
Yeah, the states that she basically had gifted to her that everyone knew there was no way possible she was going to lose them, except New Jersey. I thought Trump might pull out New Jersey, but that was my hope for my own home state.
2024. Look at this. California, Harris's home state. New York, where I'm coming from right now, of course. Illinois, New Jersey, and of course the great Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which is a bastion of blue liberalism. These are the states that folks in the United States are moving away from and into the red states, which is propelling a red state boom. Now,
well, how does this translate? I need to have someone on the side here say, but how would this manifest on an electoral map? Oh, I'm really glad you asked me that, John. Let me hit the next slide.
Oh, this is interesting, right? But it could also have major political ramifications if it holds for 2030, the next census. Because
Really?
Take a look here. If, in fact, the 2025 population shifts hold for the 2030 census, look at this. Look at the House seat shifts by state. Remember, of course, we apportion the number of House seats depending on the population in each state. If, in fact, the 2025 population shifts hold for 2030, states that Kamala Harris won, they would lose. They would lose 7 seats in the United States House of Representatives. The states that Donald Trump won in 2024, they would gain 7 seats. Now, this isn't just about the House of Representatives, right? It's also about the Electoral College, because the number of electoral votes that each state gets is equal to the number of senators. Each state, of course, has 2.
So what would this mean for a Democratic candidate for president?
Plus the number of House seats that they have. So what would this mean for the House of Representatives? Well, if you remember back in 2024, right, it was all about
It's really not about the House of Representatives, because even if you have blue seats in a red state, that doesn't really change anything.
talking about the blue wall. If Kamala Harris could win the baseline Democratic states and then add in the blue wall states of
The Electoral College is where this really matters.
Michigan, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, she would get to 270 electoral votes. But if all of a sudden we, in fact, have applying the 2025 estimates, the population estimates, to the Electoral College, the blue states plus the blue wall of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin would no longer be enough. Under the current estimates,
the blue wall would not help the Democrats if this trend continues. Imagine my surprise that people who basically make themselves, the bastion of a society for people who cannot physically reproduce, while taxing people out into the poorhouse and flooding their streets with homeless and illegal aliens, apparently American citizens aren't really at home there, not really too comfortable with that.
you get to exactly 270 electoral votes, the minimum needed to win the Electoral College.
Right now, they barely get to 270 if they get the blue wall. That's as for this past election and the upcoming presidential election in 2028. But if this trend continues, the blue wall won't bail them out.
If, in fact, you apply the 2025 estimates, look at that. You would only get to 263 electoral votes if you were a Democrat, which would mean a Republican victory. Now, of course, we're still a number of years away from reapportionment, right? We take the census come 2030.
And who knows? Maybe all the LGBTQIA will start to reproduce faster. That's possible. I guess it's possible. They can't reproduce slower.
But what we can say so far is we got a red state boom going on, a blue state depression going on, people moving from the blue.
Here's the thing. This also doesn't account for him removing illegal aliens. He's not even accounting that.
States to the red states. And if it holds for 2030, well, it would make the Democratic nominee for president's job of winning the Electoral College that much more difficult.
What he's not even accounting for here, which is even more encouraging for those of you who dread the idea of seeing a Democrat president again in our lifetime, what he's not even accounting for is that a large part of their population is based on the fact that they have tons of illegal aliens. Well, if you actually can, so far he's removed 2.5 million illegal aliens. If he removes 10 million over the course of his term, 10 million over the next 4 years, that trend were to continue, let's say under a President J.D. Vance, these states could shrink significantly because so much of their overall population, which gives them that much more of an electoral boost, is baked into the fact that they're housing all these illegal aliens who cannot technically vote, don't vote, never, ever, ever vote, never, impossible. Anyone who says that is a crazy conspiracy theorist if you think that they're voting. But whether they vote or not, the point is they definitely count towards the Electoral College. They definitely get representation. So once they're getting representation, it means that these blue walls, this blue wall in these blue coastal states, they start to shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink. We could be looking at in 2032 election, we could be looking at what we consider to be the baseline blue states as of now, comprising 255 electoral votes. That's what they're potentially looking at if they see continued shrinkage of their illegal alien population, together with the domestic migration and the birth rates and all that other stuff. These states are shrinking, which means their influence in our elections are shrinking, which means that you and me, hopefully, have less concerns that we're actually going to live under the thumb of a Democratic president anytime too soon, assuming, God willing, we can manage to take that 2028 race. That's a very key race, which is obviously a ways away. We've still got to focus on the 2026 midterms. Anyway, I like starting with good news. That's why I started there. Let me catch up on some super chats and whatever rants may have come in. There may have been one or two. Did any rants come in? Oh, a couple of rants did come in. Look at that. So let's catch up on that. If I'm going to start in the rants, even Spicy Sophism says Stoics call it premeditato malorum. Premeditatio malorum. But the idea is not to expect the worst. Oh, premeditatio malorum. The idea is not to expect the worst, rather to contemplate all possibilities and be prepared for any. Yeah, but it ends up coming out as expecting the worst. He also says, also temper both complaints about unpleasant circumstances and celebration of pleasant ones by remembering that it could be otherwise and to practice rough conditions. Trust me, this comes in handy. All right. There you go. The clinical analysis coming in there. John Mansell start us off this evening. Happy to be here with you to go through the Epstein files, celebrate the success of Thomas Massie, leading the charge, hold Trump to his word, and release them. I'm glad he did release them. I think he sort of expected some backlash based on how many times his name comes up in the Epstein files. But I think he underestimated our ability to glean past the ridiculous, empty speculations and to ignore the rhetoric from the left. So yeah, his name comes up in the Epstein files, the dump that they have so far, like they say 38,000 times. But we're going to see that that's every time, literally every time, it's like the most ridiculous claims from people who are just in insane basket cases. So I think there was a distrust back in July when he first was hearing about what was in these Epstein files. I think there was a distrust for the ability for MAGA to see through the crap, and just a concern that mob mentality would suddenly wrongly turn on him and so start thinking that he's a terrible human being because his name just pops up there over and over again. And that was a poor choice on his part. It was a poor choice on his part to really have so little faith in MAGA. He should have had more faith. Snow Miser and Heat Miser, is that what their names are? Is that what they are? I trust you. That's the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer one, right? Is that? Yeah. Okay. Why did you choose this particular carrier, Joe? I'm not sure. I'm not sure where we're going with that. There's only so many pigeons you can work with, right? Only so many pigeons in the market. Just want to say hi. Oh, that was my Forrest Gump wave. How you doing, Jacob? Rachel Hope, Princeton Engel. Oh, it's been a minute since I've seen you. Here for the long show. Lots to cover. Been here since Fairfax trial. Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard. Oh, well, glad to see you back. Good to see you. Good to see you. This guy is amazing. He dreams in numbers. He gets so excited. I don't know. He has this energy at 8 o'clock in the morning, but I'm here for it. Only reason to watch CNN. It is fun. It is fun. Janice, member for 8 months, saying, love the show. Thank you so much. I think it's actually T. Renee's, not Trini's. I never knew. Trenis? Well, anyway, thank you. I appreciate that. Those swing states are going to be interesting. Everyone hates the Dems, and Trump managed to destroy the coalition he created, except for those old enough to have locked in a sub 2% mortgage. Yeah, I look. The question is the split in MAGA, right? That's really the question. In 2021, at the start of 2021, before Biden was sworn in, I put out a video. One of the very first videos I ever put out was a video called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And it was basically talking about what we should expect over the forthcoming 4 years. It would probably be a very interesting thing to look back at. I should make that like a goal, because I know no one can find that anymore. And I was basically talking about what, the good, the bad, and the ugly of having Biden in the White House. And one of the things I pointed out is when you have control of the White House, it becomes much more challenging to maintain your coalition. And I pointed out that the left has traditionally been a cobbling together of different forces, which often are at loggerheads with each other. Like Muslims, they're pro-Muslims and they're pro-blacks. Muslims and blacks don't like each other. They're not friends with each other. There's no affinity there. Or women and trans, right? Hey, this is like actual clashes. When there's someone you hate in the White House, you sort of set aside your differences and you come together and you basically no, we got to get rid of this guy. So you sort of set aside those differences. But once you come to power, maintaining that coalition, where each side is like, no, listen to me, ignore my political enemy over here. It's like, tune them out. Like, you're giving them way too much love. And the fighting starts becoming very real. When there's a common enemy, it's very easy to pull everyone together. Once that kind of enemy has been defeated, keeping everyone happy in the same big tent is much more challenging. So what we saw work the same thing coming into 2024, where we all saw just how disastrous the Democrat Party was, the Joe Biden administration was. So coming together was easy. Maintaining it, when you have in that mix, you have libertarians, you've got your neocons, you got your MAGA. These are all different philosophies as to like what is a healthy America. And just even what is MAGA, even amongst MAGA, it's like, what is MAGA? Is MAGA Donald Trump? Is it foundational values? Is it, what is peace? What is peace through strength? The whole neocons versus no new wars. In fact, that's the isolationist wing of MAGA. So all of this, and then there's varying degrees of isolationism in MAGA. Like, at what point are we still isolationists versus, there's just so many different levels, and these all start to rear their heads when they see him picking one side over the other and actually how he's carrying out his policies. So that is likely you're going to see the fractures. And the question becomes how well you can keep together through the 4 years in order to keep things going. So it's not surprising. And the question is, the mark will be how much success they can have. 650 illegals apprehended by immigration officers in West Virginia this weekend. Didn't see much reporting about that. That is pretty impressive. 650 in just West Virginia. We really can't appreciate just how many they managed to be getting out. They really are removing a lot of illegal aliens. So they're starting. It feels like they're starting to go faster and faster. So appreciate the update. Hey, Tammy, good to see you. Another face I haven't seen in so long. Wow, did all some people get notifications tonight? What happened? What happened? I don't understand. All these people, all these old friends coming out of the woodwork. Darth Hideous rated the stream. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, let's start getting into some of our stories. I think it's time for us to start doing that. Let's start getting to work. We're 30 minutes in. Let's get into the stuff that we actually talked about. Let's start off by talking about Dan Bongino, who I didn't really cover it. I mentioned that he was stepping down from the FBI. He has stepped down into his private life. And his take on the drop of the Epstein files I thought was interesting. I want to just start off this thing here with him talking a little bit about the Epstein files. And we all know his tenure with the FBI, I think we have to call it kind of a failure. And, we can all love and admire Dan Bongino. We didn't love him in his role as the deputy director of the FBI, and primarily because of Epstein. So with the whole Epstein thing coming out, I think him breaking down his struggles with the Epstein files is an interesting to hear him give his take on now that he's free of employment from the federal government.
But it was a level 10 problem. It was never going to please everyone. The person I thought at the time who nailed what the issues were with this was our good friend Mike Davis.
So he's talking about how he struggled with Epstein while he was working for the Trump administration as deputy director of the FBI.
I'll play the CNN one, the clip next, but throw up Davis's tweet. There were a ton of problems with this. There was grand jury material. There was he put this out. He's anyone who rapes kids deserves the death penalty. Amen. Here's the problem with the Epstein mess. The FBI doesn't have the evidence many thought it did. I want to see the files, folks. I said, don't let it go. I meant it. We got elected. We looked at it. The file was not what was in there, was not what we thought would be in there. There are not tapes with powerful men raping kids.
Okay, so I don't know what he thought he was going to find in there. I think it would be I hope he's not saying he was naive enough to think that Democrats were just going to leave everything in pristine condition because, no, we can't mess up the files. As if, they have too much more moral clarity to actually, sprinkle stuff in there that is stupid and ludicrous, or to remove things that they think are particularly terrible for Democrats. Like, I hope, I don't know what it is that he's implying he thought would be there. And that sort of naive take is a naive take that we've heard from a lot of MAGA. Like, did you really think that's what that's what Merrick Garland was going to leave behind for you? Did you think that's all going to be there? Because I don't think that's a realistic take. I think that's a pretty juvenile take. We saw how corrupt they were in one thing after another that they did. One thing after another. They were so corrupt in going after Donald Trump, so corrupt in going after the J6ers, so corrupt in how they prosecuted and who they prosecuted and the duration of sentencings that they went after. Do you think that they have any problems with doctoring a file to remove stuff that they don't that displeases them? And to maybe throw in some other stuff that just, throw shade at Donald Trump. I think it's almost like stupid to spend time in Washington and think that those files were going to be a proper reflection of everything. So, he's saying they didn't have everything we thought they were going to have. That's less a reflection of, to me, I don't think he's lying. I think it just shows a certain naivete that he was expressing before he got in there. And I want to be clear, as I'm watching this, I like Dan Bongino, but like you, or like many of you, I shouldn't say like you might be different in this regard, but like many of you, I soured on a lot of what he said and did during his role there, particularly with respect to the Epstein files. In fact, I'm going to put up during his role there. I'm going to put up a poll here about Dan Bongino. I'm just going to ask you. How do you feel about Bongino today? Before as deputy director. Here's the question. I'm going to have better, same. I'm going to have generic, worse. And then I'm going to have worse specifically because of the Epstein files. So 2 different kinds of worse. So if that's the primary reason, even if there's other reasons, just click worse because of Epstein. I'm going to end up merging those two together. But how do you feel about Bongino today compared to before he worked for FBI as deputy director? Better, same, worse, or worse because of Epstein? There's your poll.
There's not a list. Epstein's Rolodex was already public.
His Rolodex doesn't do anything. His Rolodex is just a Rolodex. It doesn't tell you who's on that Rolodex because they're having meetings at, Hedonism Island or something.
Files largely unreleasable for many reasons, including grand jury material, which they're moving to get a lot of that out. Court records under seal, child pornography that was downloaded from the internet.
No one cares about. At least nobody cared at all about seeing, accessing, I'll correct my words. I shouldn't say no one, because I guess there's always someone out there. I'll be more precise, okay? Nobody who is actually has their head screwed on even 20% okay. So you could be 70% bonkers and 30% okay. You would still be in this group of the rest of us, meaning the overwhelming majority of Americans, by 97% of Americans, did not have any interest in what videos Epstein may have collated involving others, children being harmed sexually that were outside of his purview. Meaning, assume for a moment that this sick, twisted, demented man built himself a library of videos that he just enjoyed watching. He didn't create them, didn't produce them, had nothing to do with their creation, but he managed to find access to them and store them in a library. Okay? Let's assume that this demented individual had that. There are no Americans who care about that. I mean, we care about the fact that he's a sicko and maybe telling us how many of those videos, maybe giving us just a blank number of there are 17 or 700 or 70,000 videos like this that he collected. Okay. Just so, but none of us want to see these videos. None of us want to know anything about. I don't even want to know the names of the people who are in them personally. I don't want to know their names. I don't want to know anything about the victims or anything. We don't want that. None of us wanted that. No healthy American cares about that. None of us want to see that. Not blurred out. Not anything. Nothing about. I don't want to know the name of the file. Okay, I don't even want to know what name is put on the file. I don't even want that. whatever stupid file name they gave, that sick perversion, I don't want to even know. It's gross and it's disgusting. So because he's a gross and disgusting person, and he may be collating, collecting, and creating, amassing some sort of demented, sick library for he and those who have appetites like his. So I don't, this is, to me, feels like when Bongino talks about this, bad faith, because we don't care about that. What we care about are the ones that he helped to create. We care about the ones because he was protected by the government, because he seemed to be protected from on high, from various government officials from both sides of the aisle, that we really care about. You know what? I do want to know the ones he helped create. I want to know the ones he was involved in. I want to know the ones that he personally partook in. I want to know the names of the people, the other adults in the room who were with him when these things were being created, whether they were actually on camera or just sickly watching, like there was some sort of ditty fetish of theirs, or whatever it is, or creating the camera people. These are the people, their names I want out there. I think, and that's what we all want out there. That's what we all want out there. We don't want the victims' names out there. We definitely don't want to be watching it. Definitely don't want to be watching it. Now, some people might say we should shame them by basically blurring out the victims, and that should be available. I can understand that perspective, just from the perspective of let's humiliate these animals who treated children so viciously. I can understand that perspective. I can understand that perspective as being like, I get it. It's beyond what I would want, but I get that. I understand. And I see, I can understand that. But this other stuff, when Dan Bongino talks about stuff like this, or Pam Bondi, or we hear the DOJ talking about stuff like what he just mentioned here, hey, protection of victims for kids who are in videos that he didn't create, none of us were even thinking that that's something we want. So don't tell us, oh, I can't give you what you want because we're not going to give out this, library of stash that this dude has. It's like none of us were even thinking we wanted that. Why are you pretending that it's like, oh, look, you're getting mad at me because I'm not giving you these things. We weren't asking for that. None of us were asking for that. If you would have said to us, hey, you know what? There's 137,000 files, which basically have that on it. We'd be like, okay, keep those far away. That's fine. If he wasn't involved in the creation, he had nothing to do with the production or the creation or the blackmail or whatever, stuff like that. I don't want to know about it. But when Dan Bongino comes like, look, I can't give it to you. What do you want from me? It's like we weren't asking for that. No one was asking for that. So stop pretending that it's like you're doing the moral thing by keeping that from us when nobody was asking you for that. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I assume that you who are watching me right now are in the vast majority of people who have zero interest in some sick film about, Timmy and some dude in Iowa that he managed to get plucked from the dark web and store away because he's a sicko. This is a great way to take my video and have it go yellow.
Records under seal, child pornography that was downloaded from the internet.
That's a download from the internet. None of us wanted that. And that's why I'm like, why are you pretending that that's something we wanted?
You can read the rest of it. Protection of victims. We obviously don't want victims' names out there. Here's another one. Wait, keep that up for a second. Double or triple hearsay. You're seeing it now. You're seeing on Twitter, like this guy said Joey Bag of Donuts, cut this woman with a razor, or this young girl while raping her. And you're like, wow, that's a really horrible story. It's terrible. And then you find out Joey Bag of Donuts was some famous athlete who was playing a game in Phoenix that night. Like a lot of this stuff was just people not all of it. This is an extremely serious case.
Right. So what we wanted from you was for you to basically say, this an ideal setting. Okay, there's claims against player X who is that was verifiably, playing in a different city on the day that he was allegedly accused of. Don't give us the person's name. Throw it out there. You do the homework for us. You're the FBI. We wanted you to do the homework for us and say, hey, here are the things that we find to be completely non-credible and the reasons that we find them to be non-credible. You could be doing you're the freaking FBI. How many millions of hundreds of millions, billions of dollars can you throw at this investigation to basically say, hey, here's the information that we have. And we're going to collate it based on things that seem to have zero credibility, things that have next to zero, could theoretically possibly seem ridiculous. Here are things that have moderate credibility, but we don't think there's anything there. Here are things that have mild credibility. Here are things that have more credibility. Here are things that seem like they have real credibility. And here are things that are like, oh my God, this is like a house of fire. You can do that. And don't just tell us that these are our conclusions. Like, we just decided to just put this file there and that file in that category. No, explain to us. Put a little explainer. And the ones who are and the persons who are accused. You can even have groupings saying the ones that have no credibility, we're not giving you the names. Even the ones that have next to no credibility, we're not giving you the names. You can even do it like that. But here's why. Here's why. And you keep the... That's how you do it. That's how you do it. And it's not like... I just literally thought of this off the top of my head just now. It's probably a better way to do it. But what you did was not the way to do it. Of just like, we're giving you nothing. We'll give you, here's 4 files we found. And go mull these over. Or even here's 1,000 out of 6 million. Oh, I have millions sitting on my desk. And yeah, we just got to go through it. And then we're just going to release it all to you. You can't deny that this was just humiliating for you and everyone involved. And I think this is why you left the FBI. Because it was so humiliating for you. So yeah, everything you're saying here is true, Dan, but it doesn't really explain the conduct. It explains why you have frustration, but there are ways to sort past this in a way that you display transparency. Rather than just saying, and having Trump go out there saying, if you're still talking about this, you're not MAGA. Instead, you and Cash and Pam and Todd Blanche should have sat him down and said, hey, look, this is something you made a ton of campaign promises on. This is something that's really going to cause you a lot of flack unless we get out in front of this. Let's figure out a healthy way that we can actually put this out there and qualify. And even when we qualify something as being a crap story, explain why it's a crap story. And in those crap stories, there's going to be a whole bunch of stories about Trump. But you're not just dismissing the ones about Trump. You're dismissing all the other stuff about Johnny Donuts, or whoever else it was that's playing the Lakers in Phoenix that night. It's really very simple. I'm not looking to see people get besmirched. No one wants that. But you're the FBI. How many assets do you have at your disposal that could have just torn through this stuff? And it should have been tearing through it since January 20th, 2025. Or as soon as you guys were confirmed, a month later. Stupid. It's just so stupid.
Be crystal clear. But that doesn't mean every single tip that came in, had any kind of veracity to it at all. A lot of the stuff was clearly debunked. He said, does anyone believe Bondi, Patel, or Bongino would cover up for Bill Clinton or Bill Gates? Didn't even make sense.
No, okay. There are reasons if, in fact, there was, in theory, if it was harming other people who are in Trump's orbits. Let's assume that most of MAGA felt pretty confident that Donald Trump himself was not personally involved in any of this. A reasonable concern that many MAGA had was he might not be in there, but perhaps like his best friends are in there. And he's covering for them. So if that involves covering for Bill Clinton and Bill Gates too, they're the beneficiaries of protecting his other friend who's in there. and doesn't have any kind of decent alibi for what happened or why he's in there 400 times from a dozen different girls who seem credible. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like that's what a lot of people in MAGA reasonably concluded. So this paragraph here, does anyone really believe Pam Bondi, Cash Patel, Dan Bongino would cover for the likes of Bill Clinton and Bill Gates? Yes, I do. I do if it means that they're the beneficiaries of covering up for other people. And I would have thought beforehand that no. On January 20, 2025, I would assume the answer to this is no. But given how sketchy you were with these files, at a certain point, even I came to a point where I was like, I think the answer to this is yes. I do think that given the right circumstances, they would help cover up for Bill Clinton and Bill Gates. And that's a pathetic thing. And that's a very disheartening thing because these were our beacons of transparency. And this is what got so many people in MAGA so disaffected with Trump and this whole administration. Now, I didn't become disaffected. I still have high regard for the work that the Trump administration has done for the most part. I have no confidence in Pam Bondi whatsoever. But, other elements of this administration, I'm very proud and impressed with what Donald Trump has done. But this is why the DOJ and FBI lost our faith right here. Because the answer on January 20th, 2025 to this question was absolutely not, no way. And the answer to this question on January 20th, 2026 was, yeah, I think you might. And that's all because of how you handle it. Really how Pam Bondi handled it. That little interview you did there with Cash Patel with Maria Bartiromo didn't do you any favors either. Where you just looked as if like you were sweating bullets.
All over this case on my show. The Trump DOJ wanted to be fully transparent, but it couldn't at the time for the reasons above. It's not going to satisfy many, and that's fine. But folks, I'm not going to spend the next 2 years talking about it. This administration got you the information. You can all look at it. And a lot of people are using it to divide us from the inside. Those are just the facts. That's just the way it goes.
I don't think it's really dividing MAGA. I haven't seen it. I don't know. Maybe it is. It's not dividing us more than withholding it was. I think withholding it was dividing us a lot more.
And by the way, the dividing people from the inside thing is not working. A lot of this is bullshit. A lot of it is foreign operations designed to make us divorce ourselves from the inside, current thing, everything. It is a deadly serious case. There is zero doubt about it. Everyone in the administration treated it as such. Everyone from the start. But it was a level 10 problem. I can prove it to you. No one else had solved it in the past. Correct?
No one else wanted to. No one else claimed they would. No one else wanted to because of Bill Clinton, because of Bill Gates, because of those idiots. No one else wanted to. We're going to go through some of those claims. There's 3 million files. I'm obviously I'm not spending the whole show talking about the Epstein files. I'm going to go through a couple of them. But I just want to get this because I saw you were leaving. I won't trust Dan or Cash to tell us why they said they knew he killed himself and why he was originally let go because he's connected to intelligence. Got to go catch up tomorrow. I'll answer this for you, John. I'll answer this for you. I saw in this summer Mike Benz do a breakdown about this. I actually had a long conversation with Diligent Denizen about this because I thought Mike Benz, what he actually said, he's got a background working for the CIA. He understands how they talk and how they speak. And I thought what he said at that time made a great deal of sense. It made a great deal of sense. So I'll tell you what my feelings are about Epstein. Okay? Aside from the fact that he's obviously a sick, demented louse who society would have been greatly enhanced if horrific things would have happened to cut his life short 25 years before he was found in a cell. What Mike Benz broke down was that there are certain persons who are not considered FBI agents. Because we all looked at this scenario here. People, you watch enough media movies, when you hear the Epstein story and you say, I don't understand how this guy made all this money, and I don't understand why he's getting these sweetheart deals. And we all heard that Acosta made that comment about, hey, I got to cut him this deal because he's connected to the government, right? It's connected to intelligence. So when we hear stuff like that, and we see all these different movies, and we hear about these different, ways that we know that spies tend to operate. So the first thought you have is, maybe this was some twisted operation that was set up by the CIA or Mossad or KGB or MI6 or a combination of different agencies, where they basically fronted him a great deal of money. And they said to him, hey, look, we're going to give you a whole bunch of money, and you're going to basically serve as a honeypot. You'll build your little freaking island here, and you're going to use that to blackmail people. And you're going to basically provide them with all sorts of lurid appetites. You're going to feed their lurid appetites and film it and record it and basically keep all this stuff here. And you're going to have what's called a honeypot operation. Traditionally, a honeypot operation would technically be they would get, supermodel girls to come as hookers and basically sleep with various important, influential people, and then blackmail them that, hey, your career is over if this becomes public. But that this type of honeypot operation was far more demented and twisted in that it fed into a type of appetite for children. That's what the general consensus about Epstein was. Why would we come to that conclusion? Well, we saw that he personally had an appetite for children. All the massages and stuff like that we said that he definitely got. He definitely had an appetite where he liked them younger and younger. In the Ghislaine Maxwell trial that I watched, we saw as young as 12 years old. And then once they hit like 16, they basically grew out. They were too old for him. That's how sick and twisted this demented piece of crap was. So he was a sick, sick, sick man. So we feel like, oh, okay, so now he's got this little Lolita Island. We know he's flying in all these important people there. So clearly, that's all part of some government-funded intelligence operation where they're going to feed these influential people that sick appetite of, underage girls or boys, and use that to blackmail them. Because that's where the mind naturally is going to go. We see how twisted he is. We hear stories of hundreds of girls who were terrorized and abused by them. We hear stories from Virginia Guffrey. We hear stories from Annie Farmer, Maria Farmer. We hear stories from one girl after another. And undoubtedly, countless of them were abused. And perhaps many of them were abused, not simply by Epstein individually, but by other associates of his, like Bill Clinton. I don't know this happened. There's a lot of speculation about that. Or Bill Gates, I don't know. I have no more inside information than you have about this than anything that's been publicly available. So, but I hear the names. Prince Edward. And maybe some of them did partake of that. And we want those names. Those are the names we're all desperate for. But then there's this assumption that because he was let go of for these crimes, that the reason the conversation is that he was connected, that he is connected to intelligence. That means that intelligence actually was actively pushing him to try and trade children for intelligence, trade the innocence of children for intelligence, which sounds horrific enough that you're like, wow, there's someone in an intelligence agency who definitely thought, that might be a way to go. And that such a project got greenlit, and that he was, if not the mastermind, he was the primary implementer of that sick, demented idea. Now, I can't tell you that something like that never happened. And I can't even tell you definitively that that's not what happened with Epstein. It may have. Mike Benz, what he said makes a lot more sense. a lot more sense. He has 2 different videos. He's done a lot of videos about Epstein. One of them is breaking down, like figuring out how he made his money, how he made his billions, and basically how he married into like to having like the best possible insider trade. I think at Lehman Brothers, like his father-in-law was basically hitched his star to the right middle level manager right before and hooked up and became like boyfriend with her dad to a girl whose dad was like basically a middle to high level manager who became a superstar in some trading agency or another, and that he was part of that management team. And the next thing you know, he's dealing with like the top international financiers in the world, and he becomes their exclusive go-to guy, even though he had no background, because he basically slept his way there by dating the right daughter of the right dude. And that is the way things often work in finance. So all of that sounds a lot. Occam's razor says that's a lot more likely thing to happen than people saying as far as than a government saying let's give him billions of dollars. Whether that government is CIA, Mossad, KGB, or MI6, or some combination thereof. Occam's razor says that would explain how he would get his money. Supposedly, he had a lot of shrewd talent for influencing people and getting that idea. But as far as this connection to intelligence, what he describes is that there's some people who are not considered, I forgot the term, I think he used cooperative assets. A cooperative asset. What does that mean? So what he described, he said there's various individuals out there who are, let's say, Americans, and they're in international trade the way he was because of his connections. So they come to them and like, hey, you know what? You've got this deal that's going on in Southeast Asia. You've got this deal going on in Northern Africa. You've got a different deal going on. Or you have these connections with these people here in the Middle East. We really would like to plant some people in there, or we want to move some money around. We want to fund this operation here of these potential insurgents. But Congress doesn't allow us to do that. Congress hasn't approved that. So we sort of want to manipulate them and get money to them through you. So what we want you to do is we want you to basically start building a dam, oversee the finance of a dam that's going to be built in Nicaragua. And then we're going to have you basically, be the main financier person there. And money's going to wash through your accounts where it looks like you're financing this deal, this investment deal. And really, it's a way of funding Contras, the Iran Contras in Nicaragua. Like, that's the sort of way that the CIA would operate. So he said someone like that who's a cooperative facilitator, I think is the term he used. I don't remember that's the term he used, but something along those lines. Someone like that is a very convenient asset to the CIA because it doesn't raise any red flags either with Congress or with the locals when this person is coming there because he already has a resume that's what he does. So so now once again do one deal and he undoubtedly makes millions and tens of millions of dollars from serving in that capacity, in that role, where basically he ends up being like a middleman to help fund money that's coming from USAID or coming from these different agencies and then going to some color revolution that the CIA doesn't want people to know they're involved in. So that's how he ends up having an intelligence connection. And then Mossad sees that he's doing that and they say, hey, we want you to do something similar with this other agency. And perhaps the KGB does the same thing. And maybe he's playing both sides of the coin there. I don't know. But that basically now this guy, so they end up using him in that financial capacity. Then they find out that this guy has they find out that this guy just got busted for his disgusting, perverse sexual appetites. So what do? They don't want to lose this asset, so they basically go to the district attorney's office and they say, "Hey, this guy is connected to the intelligence. Well, you got to get your hands off of him." because they don't want to lose him. They're like, they don't care. They weren't invested in him because of his sexual appetite. His sexual appetite ends up being what they consider to be an inconvenience, because now they got to find a way to get this guy from going to jail, because he goes to jail. They can't use him next year or the year after that for the next financial deal that they're trying to hide from Congress. So they go to Acosta and they say to Acosta, hey, look, cut him some sweetheart deal, because we need this guy out there to be doing more deals in the future, because he's proven that he's someone who's reliable and has an established track record. So that's why they end up calling him someone who's connected to intelligence. When they go and talk to Acosta, he said, according to Mike Benz, this is not my theory, this is Mike Benz, he's a very brilliant guy, that once they come now and when they're talking to district attorney's office, district attorneys would say to them, well, wait, what type of capacity is he working with you? We can't tell you, it's confidential. Can't tell you it's confidential, but we need him. Because he needs to come and deal. So Acosta himself wouldn't even know. It would just be like, all right, I've got basically my bosses over here are telling me I need to cut this guy loose. And he's a sicko. So I got to get some sort of deal with him. Now, so basically the way Mike Benz looks at it as the most likely, and to be clear, Benz doesn't say that they don't have this whole twisted honeypot operation, but he said that this is such a common type of way that the CIA normally operates, as opposed to the whole twisted honeypot thing is really not the way the CIA tends to operate. It's not at all the way the CIA tends to operate. So he said, since this is the more common way that they tend to operate, and we can see different things that imply that this is what happened along the way. So now what ends up happening is he's working in this covert type of role for the CIA, basically as a money finance guy. He has his sick, twisted taste, and he's getting fat and rich off of this, using that to basically abuse hundreds, if not thousands, of different girls, sometimes with some of his high influence friends, because, hey, if you have money and influence, you want to be around influential people. But he's like, think about this. How do you go up to someone? How would you go up to an Alan Dershowitz and say, hey, you like 13-year-old girls? Well, who would say? You don't say something like that. It's sick. No one would say something like that. So it's like, that's why he's like that. He said it was always hard to understand how this whole thing operating, when this is something that's really easy to understand because it's consistent with the way the CIA operates. But we, the public, because we're sitting here watching all this stuff, we're just basically sort of like, well, we see he's a sicko. We see he's got this sick island. We know that he's with Bill Clinton. We know what a perv that dude is. So we're like, yeah, this all starts to add up to us. We're basically saying to ourselves, hey, these elitists, these wealthy elitists, all of them have sick, twisted tastes, and they all basically hunger for 12-year-olds, and they're covering for each other because they're all demented and sick and satanic, which it would be satanic. And the hardest thing about this whole thing, about walking you through all this, is I almost feel as if people might be watching this and thinking like, oh, Joe's trying to cover for these sickos. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm just trying to figure out what the heck happened. I'm not saying this is what happened. I'm telling you, this is what Mike Benz speculates. And it makes sense to me. And even he says he doesn't know that's the case, but it's a very high possibility. So I don't know. So we might not ever find it. And I do think that there almost certainly were some high-level people who were involved with Epstein and children. Almost definitely. And those people need to be exposed. And they haven't been. But to think that the CIA was, because he got that sweetheart deal in 2007, 2008, just to assume that because of that, that means that the CIA was running this demented honeypot operation, that is not actually the easiest conclusion to draw. It's the easiest as far as it being the most simplest, but as far as the easiest based on how CIA tends to operate, that it seems to be a little bit weird for the way the CIA tends to operate. Frankly, it's not. He actually describes the way the KGB is the one who tends to do that. He said that Mossad, when Mossad is doing it, they tend to have the spies be the ones who are the sex workers. Meaning not that you have some person on top who's feeding sex workers for that. Like we saw in Iran, that Mossad, basically there's a whole story that came out about them, how they basically had like, I don't know, a dozen or 2 dozen spies who were basically, you know, they themselves were honeypots, and they were like brilliant spies who worked their way in and were sleeping with like top Iranian generals. So, but that's very different from having a pimp who brings in children. That's a whole different nature of a thing. I don't know. That was what his speculation was. He knows a lot more about this than I do. So I wanted to share that with you because I saw you were on your way out, and I thought what you were asking here was a good question. And I had talked about what Mike Ben said once in the past, but I think I broke it down a little bit better this time. Let me catch up on a whole bunch of chats here. Is it a split in MAGA as much as Rhino versus MAGA? In Texas special election, the Rhino candidate told his Republicans stay home and celebrated the Democrat wins on socials. No, MAGA seems to have a split between like MAGA and woke right. There's a woke right, which has turned on Trump. There is. It's just like it seems to feel like a certain animus in Trump and everything related to Trump. That was not there a year ago. If the Epstein files exist, they're probably held in the same warehouse they keep the Ark of the Covenant. 3 people know where it's at, and 2 of them are dead. I don't think there's a list. I don't think there ever was a list. It would seem like a weird thing to keep. You wouldn't call it, here's my list of people I'm extorting. Touche. This guy has it right. I don't care about the Epstein. I don't care about Epstein, Brennan, Coleman, Clapper. Where are the indictments, Brongino? You fraud? Where are those? No one's gonna be asking about him about that today. But yeah. And you left off the main name, which is Obama. Brennan, Comey, Clapper, Obama. Why is it that we don't hear anything about that? Tulsi threw it in your lap. Nothing. 0. Heisenberg hitting me with 20. New members of the following. I don't know if I got here fast enough. We'll see if I did. We'll see if I caught it or not. 20 new members of the following brought to us courtesy of Heisenberg. In case you're unaware of it, the following is despite the name, is not some sort of cult type of thing. It's just a gathering of like-minded individuals who are in search of greater personal growth through community, unity, learning, and thinking. I got the last person, which is Straight Edge. Straight Edge was gifted a membership to the following, as were 19 other people, courtesy of Heisenberg. I'm going to give you the horn again. If you were gifted courtesy of Heisenberg, I urge you to please express your gratitude to him for bringing you into this gathering of like-minded individuals who are seeking greater personal growth. And to please bear in mind that I am not at all the leader of the following. I'm just a host. I'm a guy who sits here on camera. It's a whole eye candy thing. I'm not at all the leader of the following. Just a host. And it's not at all a cult type of cult. So there you go. Stuck around because you answered my cue. Thanks. Not saying I know what the connection was. He told us to not let the story go, then said drop it. Dan could have found out he's helping cover something. I understand it. The way they handled it sounded shady. And even while he was giving his breakdown there, I was telling you, yeah, here's still questions I have on what you did here, because you could have done this a lot better. There's no reason it wasn't done better. So some information dump. It's reputation, damage control. He shouldn't be listened to at all now. Everything he does at this point is just muddying the waters. So I'm curious now. Where's my poll at? Interesting. I thought it'd be worse for Dan than it is. 380 votes already. If you're here, by the way, if you can hit like and subscribe, that would be very appropriate too. If you could hit like and subscribe, because I should. How many numbers is that now? How many likes do I have? 320 likes. There's 850 you watching here, and I have 320 likes. That should be like well over 400. I should be at 500 by now. Really should be. Should be at 500. That's how you get friends. That's how you get friends in here, is if you hit the like button. It's true. I don't write the rules, but I do understand. I do have some vague understanding as to how they operate. So when I was looking at this poll here, as the numbers were coming in, I gotta tell you that he's doing much better than I thought. More than half of you say you feel the same or better about him. If you believe, I wouldn't have expected that. The winner of this was Sane. How do you feel about Bongino today compared to before he worked for the FBI as deputy director? 42% of you say the same. And 13% say better. So that's combined 55% saying same or better. And then it's split 23-22 of worse or worse because of Epstein. 23% say worse because of Epstein. 22% say worse. So basically, half of his audience, nearly half, 45% of his audience, based on this, is not happy with him. Not nearly as happy with him as before he went in there. I would have said either worse or worse because of Epstein. Probably I would have just jumped on the worst because of Epstein. And then I would have been mad at myself when I saw that JH actually has this correct too. And I should have just said worse. That's the way it would have happened for me. Just being real. Hi, Joe. What we really want is for these people to have consequences. Amen. 100%. 100%. Did you catch the part in the Blanche press conference where he specifically said what was not going to be released? Death, great bodily harm, etc. Why mention that if it doesn't exist? I did not see that. If you share it with me, I'll try to look for it if you share with me a link for that, I'll try to look for it. Especially as we seem well on our way towards hitting our goal. We got 11 out of 15 so far. Well on our way towards hitting our goal. So I'll have plenty of time to circle back to that if you manage to come up with it. I doubt the file is doctored. People assume there'd be a smoking gun list, but most criminals don't write it neatly. Saying list gave expectations. This is true. 2, devil's advocate. This is following up on number 1. Did I catch Todd Blanche thing? 2 is devil's advocate. Sure seems like Trump laid a trap by creating an almost riot of folks demanding that this be released. And if so, they played a part, in my opinion. Maybe. Yeah. I mean, he definitely got Democrats to finally start demanding it. I won't trust Dan or Cash till they tell us why they said they knew he killed himself and why he was originally let go because connected intelligence. Gotta go catch up tomorrow. This I covered already. And that is, by the way, an important thing, which is, yeah, if you tell us for sure he killed himself, rather than we can't prove he didn't, that's 2 different things. Joe believes the government can efficiently and swiftly deliver high-quality results, LOL. You know what? They could have done like a couple 100,000 files at once. Say, hey, look, we're going through it, and here's why it's taking so long. Because we're gleaning the wheat from the chaff, and here's how we're breaking it down, where it becomes like something like you can see the work that's being put into it. The Lotus Eaters had a really good episode about the Epstein files today. I found it very interesting. Go watch it if you have time. I'm not doing it right now, but maybe. Stuck around. Liz says 1 of 5, so you people can call. I didn't say it'd be a call-in. I just said 3 hours. It might be a call-in. I don't know. We'll see. Look at you. Fair enough. We've hit our goal. Good. Nicely done, Liz. Thank you. Not clicking this 5 more times to here. There you go. 3-hour show. As it should be. As it should be. As it should be. Zan says, Joe, none of this matters and is all distraction from what really matters. We need to fix the economy and start to plan for the future, what's going to happen with AI and power plants. That's almost certainly true because Epstein doesn't win or lose elections. The economy does. It's the economy, stupid. But there was a dump of 3 million Epstein files this weekend. I got to spend some time breaking it down, right? I mean, sometime. So if not now, when? I'm not someone who gets all hung up on the Epstein files. Some people have literally made a career out of just dogging on these Epstein files. I know people who have. That's not my thing. But a couple of things I just wanted to share with you here about this. Couple of things, just with respect to Trump in the Epstein files. So here is Barry Cunningham shares here. Caught Democrats intentionally spiked the Epstein files. Trump's golf club in Rancho Palos Verdes didn't even open until 2006. I knew it. The files are tainted. I don't want to hear about these BS files ever again. Online complainant reported she was a victim and witness to a sex trafficking ring at the Trump golf course in Rancho Palos Verdes between 1995 and 1996. It wasn't even his. It didn't even open until 2006. Complainant reported Ghislaine Maxwell as the madam and broker for sex parties, which Ghislaine Maxwell wasn't working for him anymore in 2005, 2006. Clients of whom included Epstein, Robin Leach, Donald Trump. Complainants reported participating in orgies and that some girls went missing, rumored to have been murdered and buried at the facility. You see, this is how you see how stupid some of these things were. Having witnessed Robin Leach strangle a young girl to death at the party. They claim to have video high-profile parties featuring Donald Trump and Ghislaine Maxwell. Where's your video? Where's your video? This is how stupid. This is how stupid some of these things are. So, I don't know who Real Ames is. 126,000 followers. All right. Some unvaxxed musician. Trump golf course didn't even exist in 1995. He didn't buy it and rename it until 2002. He didn't buy the Westchester property until 1996. These aren't suppressed facts. They're literally impossible stories that the DOJ correctly identifies unverified and sensationalist. While transparency is important, it's critical to look at the context of these specific screenshots. The DOJ explicitly stated in their press release that this dump includes millions of pages of uncorroborated citizen tips, many of which they have flagged as untrue and sensationalist claims submitted right before the 2020 election. Even the Deputy Attorney General noted that if these tips had a shred of credibility, they would have been used in court years ago. Posting these as confirmed facts without mentioning the DOJ itself calls them unfounded is misleading. We should focus on the verified evidence in these files, not the noise from a public tip line that anyone can call into. Posting anonymous tips that are chronologically impossible as if they are proof is exactly why DOJ temporarily pulled the files to add context. It's misinformation, plain and simple. But the left claimed Trump R'd a 13-year-old girl, even though that was debunked. They need to move on. This isn't what they hoped it would be. This person reported she has a friend. Leslie McMichael is a personal assistant to Epstein in Florida. The friend shared names of some of the guests at Epstein's parties, include Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. 2 voicemails left, no response received. This was the whole Rancho Verdes, California thing, 1995, 1996. Complaint was spoken to and deemed not credible. Additional research showed 3 separate incidents involving police which requested in mandatory psychiatric evaluations for the person who was complaining. No probative information. It's just like when you actually talk to these people, they sound like crackpots who are just, sensationalist means they're just trying to become important, make themselves important by pretending that they have something, even though nothing they're saying sounds remotely true or verifiable, if not utterly asinine and absurd. So in that sense, this was a massive win for Trump. This is a massive win because I don't feel like he lost any portion of MAGA as a result of this dump. Joey. Can you please put out that I'm an Iranian general? I really need Israeli honeypot. Gal Gadot will be fine. I'm free 8 p.m., 10 p.m., Monday to Wednesdays and Fridays. Make this happen, please. I'll talk to my people. I'll be like, I don't know, that guy Schwalbach. He sounds pretty Persian to me. He sounds not just Persian, Iranian. Even worse than Persian. Sounds Iranian. I should be on Barry Live. You two would be great together. Tell him to make it happen. I don't know who that is. Am I supposed to know who that is? Am I supposed to know who that is? Anyhow, Barry Live. Who's Barry Live? Now I'm curious. Barry Live. I don't know who that is. Try to find it. I don't think it's this guy. There's a channel called Barry Live, but I don't think it's that. So I don't know. Watched Brian Shapiro last night saying allegations with no evidence should be enough to believe someone. I was blown away. Brian Shapiro? Oh, Barry Cunningham. Oh, that was the guy who I referenced. This guy here, Barry Cunningham. I think I met this guy. I think I had him on one time, or he was on. I think there was one time that the name rings a bell. The name rings a bell, but I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. Let me see if really rings a bell. There's a few people who have been on this show once. He's got 358,000 subs. I definitely think I've been on this show. All right. Thank you. Tell him to get to know me. Get to know me. Now, the dump here was not as good as for everyone as it was for Donald Trump. Democrat Stacey Plaskett apparently visited Jeffrey Epstein's island in 2014. This is 5 years after he was a registered offender. Epstein later texted Plaskett advice on how to smear Trump during a 2019 congressional hearing, guidance she used in real time. Was she the only member of Congress to visit Epstein Island? Here's Stacey Plaskett saying, sorry, I thought I responded, yes, I'll be available. Please share details on time and transportation to Jeffrey. Just talking about, we'll be able to meet with Jeffrey on his island on Monday, August 18th. Sure. Tremendous. I'll have Anna, manages Jeffrey Island, get in touch with you. Thanks. Oh, that's nice. That's so beautiful. Oh, she's just meeting with her constituents. Such a concerned woman. There you go. It's $2,700 from Epstein to Plaskett. Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? Morning, Leslie. Good share information with Jeffrey. I much appreciated. I'd be grateful to support this, to support those that he made direct to assist me. Oh, so he's using Jeffrey Epstein for fundraising in 2018. Oh, that's so nice. Isn't that nice? Our campaign can receive $5,400 from each individual contributor. The FEC states that a candidate may receive $2,700 for each race. And because there'll be a primary and general election, a contributor may write one check for $5,500 and designate on note $2,700 for the primary, $2,700 for the general. Isn't that so nice? Yeah. This sick woman. And there's his 5,400. Isn't that nice? So she's texting him during hearings. She's getting money from him, hanging out on the island. Tiffany Savage saying the tell was unnamed, referencing him as President Trump in April 2016. The statement was taken. That is pretty funny. I don't see it here, but yeah, no one in April 2016 was calling him President Trump. And just a reminder that there's nothing about Trump which is nearly as unsettling. Nothing, 38,000 references to Trump in those files, and not a damn thing nearly as unsettling as this.
You're going to stand right next to me. There you go. And then we're going to have.
There you go.
Got it? Okay.
And the people in the back, you can spread out a little bit.
I hope Aaron, this vid doesn't get me demonetized for what, showing a pervy old man touching minors.
You're welcome to the front row. Do you remember that, Jordan? No, not smile. No date till you're 30. Hey, Angel, how old are you? 12. You're 12. What's your name? How are you? The problem is, you guys, you got a hard time.
This touching of the hair is very weird.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? All right, sister. I like kids better than people.
Yeah.
Grandpa's one of those guys.
That's nice of you to
No, I'm
say.
not saying. He knows. Do you know what my daddy used to say? His granddaughter said one important girl.
Yeah. I don't know what that sound is either. So there you go. That's my Epstein coverage. Spent an hour and a half on what I thought was going to take me like 20 minutes. It's a good thing I got 3 hours tonight. It's a good thing. It's a good thing because I would make it anywhere tonight. Dominion F. Duck says, good logic is not gay when a real man puts Anton's firm and juicy. He's making an advertisement here for Biltong USA. No, I'm not reading that for $1. No, I'm not reading that for $1. Okay? I'm not reading that for $1. You gotta pay me like $100 to read that one. $1. You're like shoving my G-string there. Ridiculous. I have high class. All right. So, what's going on in LA? Well, long story short, this is the ICE facility in Los Angeles this weekend. Oh, there's the LAPD have everything under control. Nice. Just utter friggin' chaos. Mexican flags, everything but an American flag. Sudan flags, Somalia flags. They got every flag there. All the colors of the rainbow. And surprisingly, no flags which had colors of the rainbow. Surprisingly, I'm not sure where this one was, but Heather 007 reports that this was a rights protest doesn't give you a right to impede worship. A rights protest meant to be done peacefully. Sans intimidation. It's spiritual welfare. An ICE watch group assumed that ICE agents were at a church service, harassed servicegoers as they went to their cars. Isn't this nice? Hundreds of people on the other side of the gate waiting for them as they're coming out. It's sad they had to say, fortunately, they didn't storm the church. I guess perhaps arrests help stop people from doing that.
Crazy.
They have security, which I guess helped them keep them from storming the gate.
Go straight across, watch your step.
It's craziness. It's really craziness.
Watch your step, go straight across.
Anyhow, you get the feeling. You think that's slowing Tom Homan down? The left thinks they got a break with Tom Homan coming to Minnesota? The
president wants to de-escalate the situation. And they set the record straight, because my staff said they've seen a lot of people that say President Trump's backing off on his promise of mass deportation. That's just untrue. My message up there was the same message that's been since January 20th, when President Trump took the Oval Office. We're going to have a mass deportation, but we're going to prioritize the arrest of criminals and public safety threats. I'd said from day one, if you're in the country legally, you're not off the table. I looked at the numbers just about 15 minutes ago, Sean. President Trump's been in office just over a year. We got over 700,000 deportations between the border and ICE. That's a record. I've been in D.C. about 15, 16 years. I've overseen more deportations than any other man since the Eisenhower administration. So if anybody thinks that Tom Homan and President Trump isn't serious about immigration enforcement and having a mass deportation, then they weren't paying attention to the press conference. Prioritization of smart law enforcement. But if you're in the country legally, you're not off the table, and we'll find you too and deport you too.
So there you go. That's when he was brought in there. A lot of people were saying, "Oh, you got rid of Greg Bovino. This means that everything is all over. You're dialing it back." And I was like, "You brought in Tom Homan here. Hey, he's not chopped liver." Everyone was all upset, and that's it. You know, and some of the statements Trump made, I was like, maybe he means it. Maybe it's political to try and sort of ratchet down the heat a little bit, which I thought was a poor way to ratchet down the heat. Because you never make a terrorist think you're exceeding his demands. They only become that much more insane. So I thought that was a poor strategy on his part. But the point that I'm getting at is, I don't think that we're dialing it back until we see that, that we're actually dialing back. And Tom Homan's claiming not at all. So that's a good thing. Here's more. This is CNN's coverage of the attack of the ICE facility in LA. This is what I meant to have actually before.
You can see an officer back there. He's alone, and they're just throwing things at him. I mean, it's just pretty incredible that these protesters have overtaken this, and there's no police.
Even CNN is kind of astonished by Karen Bass's ineptitude here. Where the hell are the LAPD?
I don't see anybody here to kind of manage this crowd. So like I was saying, this is at the tail end of a very long day. Looks like they're cheering because they were able to push that officer back inside. Okay, and now people, okay, all right, hold on. Do you see the police? You can see.
Even CNN is recognizing that, hey, Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom suck. If you think things were bad before, that's before Nick Shirley showed up. Nick Shirley is apparently in California. This kid sends out a tweet saying, hey, guess what? I'm going to California. It gets 278,000 likes. 278,000 likes. It's good to be Nick Shirley. This is the time of his life. And here he is visiting one place. They see Nick Shirley coming. Nick Shirley spotted in San Diego. He pulls up to some residential home.
It's Nick Shirley, our state, guys. Look.
There's 14 children enrolled here.
You don't care. This is my daycare.
Then where are the children?
You don't care.
Where are the children at?
It's not enough, Minnesota. You come here. It's not enough. It's Nick Shirley.
That's not enough, Minnesota. You come here. It's not enough. Not enough, Minnesota. You didn't get enough. You get enough love in Minnesota. I don't know. He's going to California now. I do think it's going to make things ratchet up in California, both on the ICE side and on the other side. Both on the ICE side and the anti-ICE side. But there was a report out with respect to the anti-ICE side. Well, actually, before I get there, let's just talk a little bit about the LAPD. Here's the LAPD talking about how they feel about the whole ICE can't mask themselves policy. In a jaw-dropping rebuke of Gavin Newsom, the LAPD is refusing to enforce the state's new ban on ICE agents wearing masks to protect from doxing. Wow. That is pretty crazy.
The reality of one armed agency approaching another armed agency to create conflict over something that would be a misdemeanor at best or an infraction, it doesn't make any sense.
Chief McDonnell went on to say the state's federal mask ban is not a good public policy decision, adding, in his opinion, it was not well thought out due to the possibility of conflict between law enforcement agencies. The ban on face coverings, known as the No Secret Police Act, was introduced following immigration raids across Southern California that began
I don't think that ban is legal.
Last summer. The law went into effect on January 1st.
I don't think they have any authority to tell federal agents how they need to dress. I think they have no authority on that regard at all.
but is not being enforced because the department.
And if they tried enforcing it, we'd have to probably go up to the Supreme Court. I don't see how they have any authority to tell a federal agency how to act.
Department of Justice is currently challenging it in court. So far, the
they are
judge
challenging
fighting
it.
over that case has indicated that the federal government has a strong argument that this could be discrimination against federal agents, since some California state law enforcement is exempt.
The reality of
Oh, so it's discriminatory in how they're applying it. Okay, all right. I just would say supremacy clause. You got no business telling us how to dress. Right. So I mentioned to you that we now have evidence, or further evidence, in case we needed further evidence, that the leftist agitators are being paid. Check this out. Got caught packing up all their equipment after clocking out of the designated protest time. David Cate got the entire thing on video, and they're furious. It's communist dollars.
If you've ever wondered how protests happen on the spot, this is exactly how. Without organizers, without the music, without the bullhorns, without all of these people coming together. And right now what they're doing is they're loading their trucks to leave out of here after they finish with the protest. None of the protests that you see that happen immediately after something happens, which is all the time now, wouldn't be possible. What's behind me is a combination of Party for Socialism and Liberation. We have Democrat Socialists of America here as well, and a couple very loose communist organizations like Revolutionary Communists for America. None of the protests that you see are organic. They're well organized, and because they're well organized, that means they're well funded through various campaigns, whether it's foreign influence campaigns or it could be even Democrat campaigns. So this is how it all happens. If you've ever wondered how protests happen on the spot, this is...
It's crazy. It's crazy. It's really crazy. Such a messed up world we live in. Such a messed up world. And if you thought that was sickening. So this is misrepresented. This post here is misrepresented by Chad Keaton as being the mayor of Long Beach. Other posts are saying that he's not the mayor of Long Beach. He's running for mayor, this guy. Calling on gang leaders in his city to meet him to plan attacks on ICE. This guy is hoping to become mayor. This is an insurrection. This is how you basically tell Trump, hey, you need to institute martial law here because we're about to be sicking gangs on your ICE agents.
My name is Rogelio Martinez. I am calling all 55 gangs in my beautiful city. I expect a gang leader from every gang, all 55 gangs, and I'm not going to name them by name, but I'm calling the Latino gangs. I'm calling the Cambodian gangs. I'm calling the Filipino gangs. I'm calling the Black gangs. I'm calling the Pacific Islander gangs. I'm calling all gang leaders to meet me right here, Long Beach City Hall, this coming Monday. Why Monday? Specifically, I need you to be here to meet me in person to take back this city because our leadership is not doing anything about it and our police are powerless. Once again, let me be very clear. My name is Rogelio Martinez, your 2026 Long Beach City Mayor, and I need your help. I need to see 55 gang leaders here this coming Monday. We need to take back the city. Enough is enough. ICE needs to get out of Long Beach. And this is the only way that I know how to get them out.
This is literally calling for an insurrection. This is literally calling for an insurrection. I hope that the FBI and Cash Patel was shrewd enough to have some undercover agent basically go in there posing as a leader of some gang and basically catch this guy calling for a war on ICE. Why are you calling gang members? Why the heck would you be calling gang members unless you're looking for there to be blood in the streets? I mean, this dude's a psychopath. Now, I'd be surprised if the black gang leaders or Cambodian gang leaders, or even Pacific Islander gang leaders, are too down with the idea of fighting ICE, unless they're getting nicely compensated for it. But this guy is basically trying to start an insurrection. I mean, this theoretically is like death penalty type stuff. What this guy's calling for, literally, this is the, you can't have a more direct insurrection, call for an insurrection. You need to get evidence as far as what he's basically specifically calling for, and that would probably require undercover agents. But this guy's a menace. He's a sicko. They should be tapping his phones. They should be. This guy is a lunatic who's hoping to become mayor. Now I don't know what chances he has of becoming mayor, but I'm sure he feels like this is going to help his political prospects. That's why he's saying this out on social media like a doofus.
Peacefully.
Yeah. I need gang members to fight peacefully alongside us to get rid of ICE. Yeah. That's going to help.
But with strong force.
Peacefully, but with strong force. That's like fiery, but mostly peaceful.
But peacefully. And remember, the police are not at fault. The police are not doing anything wrong. I'm not here to...
Please don't start shooting at police officers. Only ICE agents is what he's trying to say. And I obviously think that's horrific. I don't want YouTube to get confused and think that I advocate. No, I'm telling you what his words imply. The sicko's words imply.
Defund the police. I stand with my Long Beach police officers, my men and women that serve the Long Beach Police Department. But they are powerless. They are powerless against ICE. I need your help. I need all 55 gang leaders to meet me here this coming Monday. And we need to take back Long Beach. Enough is enough. We cannot have any more innocent people be taken and detained.
Rogelio Martinez. So he's on the ballot. Dude's a psychopath. And he thinks that by saying peacefully a couple of times in there that's going to basically mask what the objective is in calling together every gang member from Long Beach. All right. Maybe that'll work for you. Maybe that'll work for you. I don't know. Last week, I spent some time talking about how Ilhan Omar, you might have heard of her, Ilhan Omar surprisingly became a millionaire. Oh, here we go. Before I do this, I got a Rumble rant. Still not reading it. It's only $10, but it's $10, so I'll share it with you for you to read. Still not enough. No. I'm thinking that to read this out loud, seriously, would $200, Dominion After Dark. $200. But it did pay $10. So for $10, I'll share a picture for you to read. So I'll give you 15 seconds to read this to yourselves. Okay. All righty. All right. So last week I covered how Ilhan Omar became a millionaire. Apparently, she's not the only member of the progressive squad. We're all into communism. It's all about the people. Oh, it's all progressivism. Everyone should share. She's not the only one to come worth millions of dollars. No. I mean, look, AOC, I can't even imagine what that chick's worth. Well, I'm not even talking about her. No. Apparently, if you can stay in Congress as a member of the squad, screaming how communism is the only way that's fair, you can become wealthy. Check out this report from Kaylee McEnany about Ayanna Pressley.
It looks like Ilhan Omar isn't the only millionaire squad member. Now, our team dug into open secrets and financial disclosure reports. What we found is that when Ayanna Pressley was elected to Congress back in 2018, she had a negative net worth. You fast forward to today, she's worth $1.3 million with assets worth up to $8 million. Now, that's a massive increase in just 6 years, especially for someone on a $174,000 congressional salary. It's impressive, really. But how did she do it? Well, part of its property in 2024, Pressley reported owning a Martha's Vineyard rental worth up to $5 million, as well as multiple Boston rentals worth up to $1 million each. Now, for context, back in 2019, she only reported owning one property in Boston. We're also learning days before Pressley was sworn into Congress, her husband quit his $92,000 annual Boston City Hall job to start his own consulting firm called Conan Harris & Associates. And as we read more of the Congresswoman's financial disclosure reports, we learn that her husband also saw his income jump while he was in Washington. His client list consists of some government organizations, including one with deep ties to the Obama Foundation. But as he started his firm and seeked new clients, he faced ethics concerns because of Pressley's job in Congress. Quote, as Harris's days dwindled in the city's Office of Public Safety, he used his city-issued email account to pitch Walsh's chief of staff on staying on as a consultant. City officials say they did not solicit nor accept the offer, and state ethics laws bar municipal employees from knowingly using official resources for personal gain. Now, we asked Pressley for comment, and we even invited her on. She did not answer. But
surprise, surprise. Surprise, surprise. They all so crooked. They all so crooked. We'll come back to this story. I still got a lot of ground to cover here. I'm gonna move these two stories to the back end. I want to get into Don Lemon. Let me close out some of these tabs though, because I feel as if I have a lot of tabs, and it's risking having problems down the road. So let me just close out some of the tabs that we covered already. All right.
He's also on.
Let's talk about Don Lemon. He was arrested after pursuant to a grand jury indictment this weekend for his role in participating in the invasion of the church a week ago Sunday. Well, here's Megyn Kelly and Michael Knowles talking about one particular tidbit with respect to his activities a week ago with the city's church.
On camera giving them coffee and donuts in solidarity.
Oh, we have that.
Yeah, I mean, there's...
Well, let me show that, Michael. Good point. We haven't shown that yet. Here it is.
You want some coffee? Awesome. Thank you. Anybody want some coffee? You're welcome.
Everybody want to work?
Yeah.
We're out here just
Good. You want some?
I'm good, thank you.
Want any coffee?
Thank you.
You guys want any coffee?
I'm good, thank you.
What about you, brother?
Appreciate what
You
you're
good?
doing, Dom.
Okay, thank you.
You good?
Yeah, we're
You're
good.
good?
Thank you.
You're good?
Thank you.
All right. I'm here. You guys want some? You don't want to wash that down with anything?
In all my years covering the Westboro Baptist Church or Code Pink or the Women's March, I never joined Michael Knowles. Never. I never served coffee, donuts. I never said good when they were telling me about their plans. Never. I never gave them any assistance or aid whatsoever because that would be crossing an ethical line for a journalist.
Of course. I've never even given coffee and donuts to the subjects that I interview that I like, much less the ones that I don't like.
To the staff of the Michael Knowles
certainly
Show.
not. You kidding me? Absolutely. We run a tight ship around here. This is so above and beyond. And by the way, it is incriminating. I know Don Lemon wanted to get some great clips out of this, and he did. He went viral for it. But this is incriminating because it shows that he is an active participant here. He's also on camera giving them coffee and donuts in solid.
He's saying it's incriminating because it shows he's an active participant. This is after the fact. So I don't know that it's incriminating. I do think that this is pretty funny. The righteous indignation. By the way, this guy's name, I forget his name. One of you will know his name. Just scream out his name if you know his name. He's the head of TMZ, this doofus. Crying about Don Lemon being indicted.
So the Trump administration wonders why people are saying that they are trying to form a dictatorship. Well, look at the landscape.
You've been screaming that for the last 8 years, so shut up.
Arresting Don Lemon, who covered a protest in Minneapolis.
He was involved in the protest.
Is just insane, ridiculous, dictator-like. This is the
Harvey Levy
playbook that dictators use to destroy democracies and take the will of the people away. It is as simple as that. The First Amendment is the First Amendment for a reason.
This scumball was there when Charlie Kirk, and I think he was sitting like right there reporting on Charlie Kirk's death. And you heard in the background when the news broke that the shot had killed him, the cheering in the back of his office there. So these people are scum.
Of the people away. It is as simple as that. The First Amendment is the First Amendment for a reason.
Yeah, the First Amendment, before you have freedom of the press, has freedom of religion. So there's that. If you're going as far as primacy. So freedom of religion actually comes before freedom of the press.
It is considered the preferred amendment when
not more preferred than freedom of religion.
You have to start balancing what's more important.
Yeah, freedom of religion is pretty high up there. Comes forward.
The framers of the Constitution knew that a free press was essential to a democracy.
We're not a democracy, we're a constitutional republic.
Without a free press, you don't have a democracy.
They never wanted a democracy. So you're a doofus, because they weren't seeking a democracy. They were seeking a constitutional republic. That's why he got arrested.
And it's real clear that Donald Trump and company doesn't want a free press.
No, free press would be fine. I think that labeling him as a free press rather than a hired stooge is pretty stupid. But technically, I think would qualify as being freedom of speech. Yeah.
The idea that a journalist, which Don Lemon has been for...
Stop, get off your high horse. I mean, freaking Abraham Lincoln threw people threw journalists in prison. I don't want to hear about this.
30 years would walk into...
You're going to call Abraham Lincoln a dictator? And call him a dictator also? Doofus.
To a church and film a demonstration.
Well, the question is whether he participated in their demonstration, their illegal demonstration. That's really the whole issue here, is the extent of his involvement in that illegal demonstration. If they were demonstrating against when they're demonstrating against an abortion clinic, you're all on board with that. Arresting the press there. Yeah, I didn't see any complaints about all the people, all the journalists who were arrested for their role in J6. Where were you on that?
Which is of national interest.
Yeah, J6 was national interest also. So going in there, if you remember the press, it kind of made sense also.
And then to say somehow, when you watch the video, they say he's part of the protest.
He looks like he's part of the protest. He says things to help protect the protest from fizzling out. He says things like that. He says, I got to keep this secret. Now, I think that if you do further, I think, frankly, what they have now, I'm going to be real with y'all. If you listen to a lot of attorneys out there, people who I think are trying to argue in good faith, the general consensus is that there's not really enough here to convict him. What we see in this indictment, there's not enough here to convict him. And my gut says that's true. I don't think there's enough here to convict him. But I do think that there's possibly enough there to convict him. What do I mean by that? What we see on tape there, when he goes into the church, he's interviewing people. We see him on tape basically saying, I don't want to ruin this whole surprise thing. Let's assume that what they say on tape, the other folks there, the Nehemiah, whatever her name Armstrong is, the William Kelly, crazy, hey, that guy, that what they're describing even before the fact is describing criminal activity. And you can definitely make that case because she specifically says this attorney who talks about how she never felt like a slave before, talk about the black privilege that she must have been living with, that she never felt like a slave before until she was put in chains. Put in chains. Well, there were plenty of white people put in chains also. William Kelly was put in chains also. He's not, so it's not a black thing. But calling on the race card, okay, that's a tired trick from a weak mind. But now we're focusing here. So when the comments that she's making beforehand express an intent when she said in her interviews with Don Lemon, she says, what we're going to do is we're going to go in there. It's not going to be business as usual. So that means she's basically expressing an intent that she's going to disrupt the church services. And in fact, she did. So I think getting her on the crime is pretty clear. I think getting William Kelly and what he did, the harassment that he did, terrorizing children. Yeah, I think that they have serious legal jeopardy. Serious legal jeopardy. Don Lemon, when he went into the church, was not. I didn't see any evidence of him chanting with them. He stood by he interviewed the pastor and a few people inside the church, and then outside the church. The pastor inside the church, maybe one other person inside the church or two, but they look like interviews. They look like reporter type activity. You can say that the reporter, got in the guy's face. If you hate Don Lemon, which that just means you're an individual with fine acquired tastes, you're going to say there's enough here to hang him. But let's assume that you're dealing with a jury of people who do not hate Don Lemon and that they're actually maybe never heard of him or they weren't big CNN watchers. What you see of his activity, what we see of him recorded so far, does not seem to me like it would be enough to convince me this is a person we should be throwing in jail. Because even if he's helping keep it secret, one of the things he says that I think could be damaging to his case is like, what happens if I go in there? If I go in there, then they're going to recognize me. Like, what's Don Lemon doing here? And I think he's worried that the surprise will be ruined. So he's now is failing to destroy let's assume that this is their plot. So they have their plot to basically dismantle the church service, disrupt the church service. And let's assume that disrupting the church service is an illegal activity, which it should be. And I think that that's a fair read, that intentionally disrupting it is a crime. So his refusal to take any steps that would stop that from operating, I don't think you can look at that as conspiratorial. And you could say that's what he's trying to do there. He's like, well, if I go in there, that might disrupt this whole thing. Like before they get a chance to really get their whole chanting on up there, people are like, hey, what's Don Lemon doing here? So he seems to be avoiding taking steps which might prevent this evil plot from baking as well as it could, from being as effective as it could. But that's not stopping the crime before it happens. That's him sort of documenting this criminal activity as it's happening. And I don't think that a reporter necessarily has a duty to alert the authorities or alert anyone. And if he feels as if, look, the only way I get this scoop is if I don't destroy this plot. I could destroy this plot. But if I do, I'm not going to get the next scoop. And I'm not going to get the next scoop. I'm not going to get the next scoop. Does that mean that he's a participant, a conspirator? No. It simply means that he's a shady journalist who is willing to basically allow people to do evil things, and he gets his scoop from it. So if you look at it, if it's framed in this way, I can see someone saying he's scum, he's human scum, he's disgusting, he's a bottom-feeding, probably literally, but certainly metaphorically, vile human being, literally and metaphorically. Well, that's not a crime. So that's why I'm saying, from what we've seen on video, from the evidence that the public has accessed so far, I think that this is a very difficult conviction for Pam Bondi or the prosecuting attorneys to get. Because you have to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that he's conspiring. And I think he can make a good faith claim to at least raise reasonable doubt that his objective was purely journalistic, based on what we've seen so far. Now, that's what his thought and intention was. Not that he's going to be creating the crime, because there's a lot of times he says things that are beneficial to his potential defense. The things that are beneficial is he says, it's not me, it's them. He says that on camera multiple times. I'm not with them. He says that multiple times. Now, is it intentionally self-serving at the time they're saying it? There isn't a foresight to say it's a good thing for me to say I'm not with them? Yeah. But it's still there on tape. It's still evidence. It's still going to help him. So to assume that you're going to get a jury to unanimously disregard that and say, I know he said that, but I think he really was part of it, I think it's very unlikely to happen. I'm just being real with you. I think it's unlikely to happen. However, before we close the book on this, if in fact there are email communications between him and Armstrong or other organizers of this protests, which basically indicate that he had more of a role in creating this whole thing, in facilitating it, in encouraging people to come, saying, hey, tell your friends they'll be on Don Lemon's show if they come, which may in fact exist. If they have something like that, that changes the entire nature of the equation. Now he becomes someone who's actually participating in helping this thing unfold. So my point is, given the public or the evidence we have publicly so far, do I think they're going to convict Don Lemon? No, I don't think they're going to. I think he's scum. And I'm kind of pleased to see him go through the process. And I don't really have much whole sympathy for this whole, oh, he's a journalist, we're destroying the integrity and sanctity of journalism, that doofuses like this clown over here are crying about, which is stupid because you don't care about that. You didn't care about it with respect to January 6th. You didn't care about it with reporters who are covering protests against abortion clinics. You didn't care about it until it's someone you like, someone doing something you like. You didn't care about so it's not about the principle. It's that you're afraid you're next, or you don't like the fact that this is your friend. But it's not about the principle. You're trying to mask all of that in some hoity-toity principle of, oh my God, democracy's on the line here, which is crap. It's stupid. It's not on the line. It's not any more on the line than it was 5 years ago when after J6. So yeah, you can eat dookies because you're full of crap here. And you're a scummy person in your own right. All over the Epstein files, running an organization which is cheering the death of Charlie Kirk. You're a human slime. But sitting here dressing up in principle, oh, the founders were worried about democracy. Founders didn't want no freaking democracy.
Watch that video. He is covering the protest.
That's what we have so far. But what if there are emails which help? I think that's very possibly. It would make sense to say there probably are emails between them, which could have, where we could find that he was facilitating the creation of this entire fiasco, which would change the whole nature of this whole thing, wouldn't it?
He is covering it.
Because I think the reason they went there that day was because Don Lemon was there. And if we assume that to be the case, that the reason they were there at this time and this place is because they were able to orchestrate that Don Lemon would be there, well, that makes sense to say that perhaps he was willfully using his clout and authority in order to help gin up more interest in people going there for the protest in the first place, in which case he would be a co-conspirator. So my point is, what we have so far does not seem enough to me that you're going to have any chance of convicting him of being a conspirator. And perhaps we should have a little added regard for journalists or people attempting to do journalism, given the nature of the First Amendment. Maybe there should be a little that's like, hey, you really need to be sure that this was not an attempt to be journalists. Okay. An attempt to engage in journalism. I can understand that philosophy, even if his brand of journalism is something that I find to be distasteful and loathsome. I can understand that philosophy, irrespective of the hypocrisy of the likes of schmucks like this, who are all too happy to have journalists get arrested at the January 6th. I'm simply saying, I think that what we have here is probably not enough. It's probably not enough to convict him. But there's very, very decent chance, at least, that there's more lurking beneath the surface that the public has not yet seen.
That's what journalists do. I covered riots. I was a local reporter in Los Angeles.
No one cares about your stupid war stories.
For 15 years. And I covered riots and floods and...
That doesn't mean you didn't start the flood. I know you think you're God, but you didn't start no floods. No one's assuming that you had any role in starting those riots.
Earthquakes and all sorts of things where I had to step into areas where there were police, where there was activity.
Oh, heroic you.
Private property. When you're covering an event like this, like a protest, which I've covered many, you step into it. And
that's not the problem. Stepping into it is not the same thing as going with them to the staging area. Well, I guess you could say that's technically potentially journalism at the staging area too. Just didn't feel like it.
That's what journalists do. And that's what Don Lemon did. The idea that the Justice Department is saying he walked onto private property, that is insane. A church invites everybody in. Have you ever seen a church with a no trespassing sign saying no journalists allowed?
Yeah, we see them in Los Angeles now, thanks to those schmucks.
Have you ever seen any house of worship that says that? It is.
Yeah, we see that all the time now because of these douchebags.
It's insane that they're making this stupid argument transparent. And yet a grand jury indicted.
And that's what I'm saying. He flew to meet them. I mean, he clearly was very involved here. Now, does that mean he's a conspirator? No. They might have been using him irrespective. I'm just saying this guy, to say that it's such a slam dunk no is kind of stupid.
Don Lemon, after a magistrate said there's insufficient evidence.
The magistrate doesn't mean anything. That dude, seriously, his wife works for Keith Ellison.
Well, a grand jury will indict anybody because Don Lemon doesn't appear before the grand jury.
Oh, you also excited about the indictments of Donald Trump? That was such a big deal there. Oh my God, grand jury indicted him. Oh my God. We didn't hear no ham sandwich stories back then. Where all the ham sandwich stories? I was looking for them in 2023. Couldn't find them. All those ham sandwich stuff. Oh yeah. How many times did you ever use the phrase ham sandwich in connection in correlation to the Trump indictments? Doofus. You hack.
Abby Lowell, his lawyer, doesn't appear before the grand jury.
That's true.
Justice Department says what the Justice Department wants the grand jury.
Where was all this defense of the indictments of Donald Trump?
To believe it almost every time they believe it. It's all the
You're a hack.
The way it's skewed. This is a ridiculous assault. And I don't want to say just on the First Amendment. It's a ridiculous assault.
It was a ridiculous assault on the First Amendment what those people did. Why can't you say that? Why don't you say that? Because that was a far more blatant and egregious assault on the First Amendment. What those jackasses did marching into the church. That was a far more egregious of the First Amendment assault on the First Amendment.
Democracy. Trump administration should
stop saying democracy. You sound like a hack.
Be ashamed of itself, but they're not.
You should be ashamed of yourself because you're raising these arguments 5 years too late. You should have been talking about this in January 6th. You should have been talking about this with the Trump indictments. You should have been talking about this over and over again. But you're only raising it now in your friends, which means you should be ashamed of yourself because you're basically trying to use constitutional values as a weapon while ignoring those same values when they're being used against people you perceive as being your political enemies, which means that you're scum. Now, I can grant you that those protections likely inure to the benefit of Don Lemon, as hack a journalist as he is. And that our country is probably healthier if we have due regard for that. And err on the side of like, maybe it was journalism here. Until we have more evidence to show that he was actually conspiring with them. But that's because I actually care about what I'm saying. And you're just going to say whatever the hell feels good for you in the moment.
And they will continue to do this. And they are going after journalists. They're getting search warrants for their homes. It is obvious what's happening in this country, people.
It's obvious you're a joke.
Look at what is happening.
Oh, God. Boo-hoo! Oh, my gosh. This guy.
Oh, poor you. You're going to look back in 2 years if somebody doesn't stand up to them, and I know people are now, but you're going to look back in 2 years and say, wow, we didn't see that coming.
Well, I did see it coming 5 years ago, moron. That's what's happening now. That's what's happening now. You're seeing this now because we saw this 5 years ago.
Well, Neville Chamberlain should have saw it coming, and he didn't.
Oh, here we go with the whole. Let's invoke the whole Hitler thing. You're so stupid. You're a child,
and we don't want to be in that position.
Yeah, no one should ever want to be in the positions you most assuredly have been in.
So wise up, everybody, because it's obvious what's happening here. This is an outrage.
You're an outrage. So there you go. Did I miss anything? I think I did. Captain Sasquatch asks, would you agree that it would have been a very bad outcome if they would have stormed that church with Don Lemon and there would have been ICE agents? You're saying the church in California? Yeah, it could have been a terrible outcome. Look, I don't want to see anyone get hurt. Even the William Kellys of the world, I don't want to see them get blown away. I definitely don't want to see anyone being harmed. I need to check and see if my stream here is going yellow. I have such a bad feeling about what happened to this stream. Let's see. Oh, it looks like I'm green. I don't know how that happened. I don't know how long that's going to be. All right, maybe we stay in the algorithm. If you're here, you could drop a like and a comment. That would be awesome. As I'm checking out the viability of this stream, I have a feeling that after I covered everything with Epstein and some of the stuff that's gone down here tonight, I don't think this one's going to stay green. I don't think I'm going to argue. It's the sort of thing I'll be like, it's really all good. And I'll be like, no. Is there irony in the fact that church is one of the main facilitators of bringing in migrants? Some irony, I guess. I see what you're saying there. I don't think it's fair to lump all churches together. Same way I wouldn't want to be lumped together with activities of some certain Jews out there. I don't think it's fair to lump all churches together. Homer is a hero. Evening, Joe. Good to see you. Thank you, GMB. It's great to see you. Anthony, come on, my fellow members of the following. One more to go. Let's hit this goal. We hit the goal. We did hit the goal. I hope someone told you we hit the goal. We did. TMZ Harvey is in the Epstein files. Let's check that out. Since we were just talking about TMZ Harvey, let me see if I can find. I'm going to do a search for that now. Everyone's been saying that, but I haven't seen it. Breaking. TMZ founder Harvey Levin, named in the Epstein files, described as a good friend who could help run a global PR effort to defend convicted Thiel Epstein and smear his victim accusers. Yet TMZ has stayed eerily silent the entire document dump. Epstein saying documents suggested shorter, punchier, no attack on press, plead guilty to solicitation. This is in 2011. No tabloid exaggeration of Jeffrey Epstein paid a price. No allegations of minors since 2005. Oh, there's no minor since 2005. It's just leaking to London press the absurdity of Fergie's statement. There were law enforcement people in my office when I was on work release that let her in. Okay with leaking to the British press. I think we need to get a statement out. I have to tell safe at the right time. Tried to call you. Harvey Levin, who runs TMZ, is a good friend. They haven't reported on this at all. But I might be able to get him to do something on the Duchess and her backpedaling. This is all the same thing. That's not a lot. That's Epstein claiming he's a friend. I don't know how much that is. TMZ founder Harvey Levin noticeably skipped over Jay-Z being mentioned in the newly released Epstein files, despite aggressively covering nearly every other celebrity named. It's not really that. I mean, what this lunatic Epstein refers to as being a good friend, that doesn't really mean that he is, to be fair. Even though Harvey Levin's slime, doesn't mean that some email comment from Jeffrey Epstein, speculation that he might help him, although he didn't seem to really harm him. He didn't report on it at all, so that's a knock on Levin. Harvey Levin's gossip vulture built TMZ into a machine that feasts on human suffering. Behind the scenes is worse. His newsroom was documented the frat house cesspool of sexism, drugs, and retaliation against anyone who dare complain. And then come the Epstein files, where the mask really slips off. He's not a truth teller. He's a predator with a press pass. Let's see what this is.
Let me tell you what part of
Don Lemon wanted an exclusive. He's not in cahoots. He is not in cahoots. He wants an exclusive.
He's not in cahoots the way you were with Jeffrey Epstein.
That is
Let me
not
tell you
in
what
cahoots.
part of the. Let me tell you what part of the problem is. It's a conspiracy. You don't have to know what any of your co-conspirators are doing as long as you commit an act.
How
in
are they
furtherance.
Well, that's what the question is. Did he commit an act in furtherance with the objective of helping them?
How are they co-conspirators? They are there to protest. Don is there to report.
Right.
I have done this thousands of
If
times in my career.
Hold on. What they're alleging is not that they were protesting, that they were on private property.
No, they're
and they've got the church is private property.
Mark, have you ever seen a no trespassing sign at a church? They welcome everybody.
That doesn't mean anything.
Hold on.
They
Hold
had
on.
Can I tell you something?
You are allowed to walk in a church. Anybody can walk in a church. Don Lemon has a right to walk in a church. If they tell him to leave, then maybe he has to leave. If they tell him when he's recording, but you are allowed to walk in a church, period. I read all of the allegations that supposedly make him a co-conspirator, and it's insulting. They're lies. They know it. It's not true.
But then again, you keep going back to lies. You don't get to
they put it all here. They put it all in here.
But the federal judge doesn't start looking at it.
I'm not talking
second guess the grand jury.
What I'm talking about is you got a Department of Justice that is trying to get Don Lemon, is trying to make this case, is trying to argue that if you
He's so freaked out.
cover a protest that Donald Trump's administration doesn't like, then we're not looking at you as a journalist.
It's not a protest he doesn't like. You see, this is more spin from this spin master. There have been a lot of protests against ICE. A lot of them. This is what's so stupid. There have been countless protests which reporters have covered. Countless anti-ICE protests, but not going into a church for the purpose of disrupting a church. And to pretend that that's not a difference is asinine.
Covering it, we're going to make you a protester and we're going to prosecute you. They are trying to intimidate they're trying to intimidate the press. If a reporter cannot report on what is going on,
he can report on what's going on. He just can't help facilitate it. Stop pretending that those are the same thing. No one claimed that you facilitated those riots that you covered, or you allegedly covered. I assume you did. No one's claiming that you helped facilitate them. But the question here is, was he facilitating this? Was he an active participant? Was he helping them get it done or encouraging?
Of national importance.
He was certainly encouraging them after the fact. Now, I don't know if that's criminal, but encouraging them before the fact certainly would be.
And be there chronicling it, then freedom of the press is...
Oh, you're such a whiny bastard. What a stupid, disingenuous claim. Such a stupid, disingenuous claim.
Dead. And when freedom of the press is dead,
democracy
dies.
Well, we're not a democracy, so feel safe. Constitutional republic's fine. Stupid. There's no democracy if we don't have integrity in elections. That's far more primary. We don't have transparency about the integrity of elections. But since we're talking a little bit about Epstein here, it's a nice little segue over. A nice little segue. I guess I got one more on Don Lemon before we segue. I should have done this one first. One more person whining.
But I'm going to start with an unpopular opinion, and that is calling Don Lemon a journalist is like calling AOC
Oh, this is funny.
a free market capitalist.
Nice. Saying this to CNN, and you know it. That's why you fired him.
He is an activist. Look at his YouTube page. Here's a couple of titles of recent videos. 1, this is how to deal with ICE goons. 2, the viral MAGA idiot. 3, Don goes off on MAGA and
So
ICE.
is it your
This
position
is someone
that
who is not a
anybody
journalist. He is an
is
activist.
it your position that anybody who expresses opinions is not a journalist?
Well,
so this is where we have the interesting line between social media influencer and agitator and journalist. There's this, and it's a very amorphous line, which I myself find myself, I find myself straddling that line as well. I mean, I'm called a journalist. Someone from the left, I'm sure, would look at me with the same disdain I look at Don Lemon. I have no doubt. What makes someone a journalist? Today, everyone's a journalist. Back in the time with the First Amendment was being codified, very few people were writing their political opinions or their thoughts on things. Today, everyone is doing that on X. Are you a journalist?
Even
Is that
if
your
he is,
position?
even if you
No.
agree,
I mean,
hold on.
well, let's deal
Even
with
if you-
the accusation that you're making that he is not a
I think
journalist.
he
It's
shed the
important
veneer of being a
because
journalist a
because
long
we
time
have
ago.
in the press a lot of different kinds of journalists. The Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the New York Post, they've got editorial boards where people are expressing opinions all the time. They're not journalists?
I think that Don Lemon is not a journalist.
But why?
But
Is
if
it because
you
he's
think,
expressing?
if you,
Is it because in his
listen,
view, in your view,
if
he's
you believe that
expressing
he
an
is,
opinion?
if you believe that he is a journalist,
But why?
I still think that he
Pete.
is wrong in this
But
instance.
Pete,
If
why?
you have a
But
time,
you're
he's a
not
journalist.
saying- you're not saying
I just
why.
don't. I think he's an activist.
Well, but you just don't is not.
And this is why the whole protection for freedom of the press becomes such a weird thing. Instead of freedom of the press, it really becomes a freedom of speech thing, which technically takes priority over freedom of the press. But then you could say, if it's just a freedom of speech thing, what makes him different from anyone else who's there? They're all expressing their thoughts. It's a very, very murky territory that the modern age has thrust upon us because of the access to social media.
But I'm going to start.
So, those are interesting thoughts. But I'm curious what you think. What do you think? How do you distinguish between a journalist and an activist or an influencer? Are the Krasensteins journalists? I feel like I'm much closer to be a journalist than any of them are. Even I'm much closer to being a journalist than Don Lemon is. Because I'm at least willing to admit when something is, something looks bad for the side that my political leanings are on. I'm at least willing to consider that. Whereas Don Lemon is just going to go headstrong like a crazy activist. So let's start with what distinguishes an activist from a journalist? What would have happened if he went in there and there'd been ICE officers on the day off praying? I don't know. You asked me a similar question earlier. I don't know. I don't know how things would have unfolded. Could have gone ugly. Any assistance he gave would make him part of it. It's just that he stay outside to preserve effect. He did stay outside for much of it. He went inside and interviewed the priest. And also one of the parishioners. But there he seemed to be in real journalist mode. Sending the Getter link of John Solomon's interview with Harmeet tonight, speaking on Don Lemon and attacks on churches overall. He was indicted by the grand jury. I know he was indicted by the grand jury. Let me see what you sent me here.
This is a really important investigation for the DOJ, and it's part of a growing group of cases. We're just at about 2 weeks after the incident.
Thank you, Kathy.
In St. Paul, Minnesota.
I definitely agree with this. His freedom of press does not override freedom of religion.
And we acted very rapidly in that case. We first went to the court to try to quickly get the criminal complaint. And then the court wanted us to go to a grand jury. So we prepared that and we went and we did that. And by the time we did that, we'd had some opportunity to investigate further and strengthen our case that was presented. And now I think the world can see the unsealed indictment that not a judge, not the DOJ, not the attorney general, but ordinary Minnesotans agreed in a grand jury that there was probable cause to believe that at least the 9 individuals charged had committed serious crimes. And so they're presumed innocent, of course. Some of them have lawyers already, and we're going to have all of that play out in court. But there are about 30 to 40 people who interrupted that church service, terrorized children, separated children from their parents, caused people to flee in panic, a full packed church service, and really ruined it for them and possibly scared some people out of coming back to church. And so the big picture message here, John, is that in this Department of Justice, we have a zero tolerance policy for anybody interrupting any house of worship, invading it, terrorizing people, or even just blocking them from entering or exiting or putting them in fear. And that goes for all houses of worship. And we will not tolerate it here, no matter who's doing it, no matter what they call themselves, if they're carrying a mic or whatever kind of house of worship it is. Because if we allow this to stand, John, you can imagine incidents of all kinds of people of all political persuasions going into mosques and synagogues, as they have been, and other churches, and doing their protests there. You cannot do a protest anywhere you want. There are time, place, and manner restrictions under the First Amendment, and private property is generally off limits unless somebody invites you on there. So I am telling you that this is just the start of this particular investigation, and I have several others open and numerous prosecutors as well as law enforcement officials in multiple jurisdictions working on these cases.
Yeah, anyone who's in the path of those cases would know you mean serious business. And we've seen it play out. I mean, the indictment is so chock full of detail of the terror that these people felt. And also in the fact that this is a community that just was hit by a church shooting a few months before this. So they were even more mortified that maybe that was underway. Don Lemon has gone out to say, I'm just a journalist. I'm being singled out. When you look at the evidence that you presented against him, is there a legitimate claim for him to claim he was a journalist there, or do you feel strongly that he was participating along with the other people attacking that event?
Well, so first of all, there's no carve out in the statute or frankly in the law for journalists. They don't get to participate in obstructing, blocking, harassing, terrorizing, and generally conspiring to do all of the above and get away with it. And if you doubt me, look at the number of journalists that the Garland and Biden DOJ prosecuted, harassed, and went after. They did this in cases that were far weaker than the case we have here. I did not create this law. Congress created the FACE Act. And this Department of Justice under Attorney General Pam Bondi is the first in history to actually use it to protect houses of worship as it was intended originally by Congress as one of the protected categories. And so that the laws in the United States apply to journalists as well. They don't get to say, well, I'm speeding because I'm running to the scene of a protest and therefore I should get out of my speeding ticket. No, if you're part of it, and people can look at the video that Don Lemon put out himself and the other so-called journalists and judge for themselves. If somebody, you look at the indictment, when somebody is identifying as we, if somebody is turning off the cameras to make sure that parts of the conspiracy are not exposed prematurely, I think that's going to be something that a jury gets to decide at some point. So there will be more.
Like I said, that part really hurts him, I think. There are parts that hurt him and the parts that help him.
People arrested in this case. I'm confident there are many more who were involved than the ones we've identified so far. And we just will not rest for this in the United States. We'll not allow it to happen. And I'm proud of the team that worked so rapidly to give confidence and reassurance to this congregation, and indeed all congregations in the United States, that this will not stand in America.
And they did work very quickly. They were very mindful of the fact that they wanted to get it done before the next weekend services. So kudos to them for that. Not just to get Armstrong and Kelly, but to get Lemon beforehand. Good job. And that is a credit to Pam Bondi and Harmeet. Kelly, thank you so much for the super sticker. I appreciate that. God bless you. Did you see Nate the lawyer's video about Lemon? I did. And I think that what he says there is pretty fair. And I think it's he's basically of the opinion that they're not going to get a conviction. And I think that he's probably right. I even watched much of Bruce Rivers talking about it. Bruce Rivers was a little bit more lefty than I would have anticipated. Some of the things he wrote in there were kind of lefty. But yeah, I can't deny the fact that if you're expecting to get a conviction here, there's a lot of tough ground here. There's a lot of tough ground. Him making a video calling these Christians white supremacists doesn't look very good. True. He kept grabbing at the preacher when he tried to leave also. But the question is whether that's going to be admissible. Because when he's calling them white supremacists after the fact, that may not end up being admissible. Not because of a hearsay problem, but because of a relevance issue. So just to break down rules of evidence with respect to that, subsequent to the actual church invasion, so he referred to them as being white supremacists. And the churchgoers as being white supremacists. Does that reflect on his state of mind beforehand? The idea as to whether he was committing a crime, they had the mens rea to commit a crime at the time? Or maybe he, because his defense would be like, maybe he came to that conclusion after seeing them. But that wasn't part of his mens rea, it wasn't part of his intent. So it would not be a hearsay problem because the statement that you make, which is against your own interests, is a declaratory statement. Even though it would be an out-of-court statement. Normally, hearsay refers to an out-of-court statement that's being offered in court. So a statement made outside of court that's now being offered in court for the purpose of establishing the truth of that statement. Meaning, this is how we want to establish the truth that I'm showing you this statement so that you believe it's true that Don Lemon thinks they're white supremacists. So I want to show this to the jury, so the jury will say, hey, you should know it's definitely true here that Don Lemon considers them to be white supremacists. Normally that would qualify as being hearsay, but when it's a statement against your own interest, you make a declaration that the defendant himself said these words. So that's an exception to hearsay. So it would not be kept out for hearsay issues, but it could be kept out for relevance because the defense would be like, you don't know that he had those feelings when he went in there. Maybe he got those feelings a day later. He saw things they said and said they're white supremacists. So maybe it's unrelated. That's what I would argue if I was Abby Lowell, and Abby Lowell is a pretty good litigator. I'm sure he'll make that claim. Yes, Harvey is in the Epstein. We got that. We covered that. Thank you. You probably shared this before I broke those down. Did you read the indictment? He obstructed the entrance, a key element of the FACE Act. They listed out many other key facts. It doesn't look like he really obstructed the entrance. Sometimes he's holding the door open even for them. I understand what they said, but you have to prove that ultimately. So obstructing, they talk about his overt acts. They're a little bit, pointing things out a little bit more harsh than they are. Anyway, I want to get on to, how many more stories do I have here? I had other things I wanted to cover with you. Speaking of First Amendment rights, let me show you Sarah Levine. You probably say, who's Sarah Levine? She's a lawyer who lost her job.
And so I thought it was possible I could continue to serve that office. I was wrong.
She used to work for the DOJ, for Merrick Garland's DOJ. She was very good at prosecuting J6 defendants.
After 3 weeks of training and getting prepared for the next week,
15 U.S. attorneys have been fired. It was a bloodbath. A bloodbath. 15 U.S. attorneys have been fired.
the termination letter I received stated the decision was based on your actions and the prosecution of persons relating to the events that occurred at or near the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. An executive order issued on January 20th, 2025, the president characterized that work as having involved a grave national injustice.
It was a grave national injustice that you were gleefully participating in like a vulture.
That has perpetrated upon the American people over the last 4 years. It went on to say that my hiring has hindered the ability of the acting U.S. Attorney Martin to staff his office in furtherance of his obligation to faithfully implement the agenda that the American people elected President Trump to execute. The termination letter made it clear to me that Mr. Martin does not understand the role of a prosecutor.
Oh no, he understands the role of prosecutor. You know, you all were so excited about the people who stepped down rather than go after James Comey. They stepped down rather than going after Adam Schiff. They stepped down rather than going after Letitia James. Oh, the heroes who stepped down. Well, where were you stepping down when these wrongful prosecutions were going against the J6 defendants? No, you were gleefully there. Gleefully there. Huzzah for the Trump administration firing you. You were part of a national disgrace for the Department of Justice.
U.S. attorneys represent the United States of America.
Yeah, well, you were a disgrace for the United States of America. That was a humiliation, United States of America.
Not the president.
And that's also not true because they're agents of the president, doofus. Where you got your law degree from is probably some woke school like Harvard.
Firing 15 qualified attorneys.
Not qualified. They're not qualified because they weren't upholding what the Constitution's all about. They're twisting the law in new and inventive ways to try and punish people that they consider political enemies. So that's not upholding the Constitution, you horrible witch.
Created an immediate deficit in the office to appropriately prosecute cases.
That's a deficit that would certainly be suitably filled by people who actually care about upholding justice rather than persecuting their enemies. Disgusting, horrible person. Snivel away. Of course, they're going to be some of my people. They're lawyers. And undoubtedly pretty talented. Couple of maybe a week ago or so, perhaps it might have been exactly a week ago, I opened this show. With let me find it for you real quick. Let me see if I can find it for you real quick. Should take me like a second. with this.
Here we go again. Here we go again.
I think it's hilarious that she said that at the inauguration.
You can come in. Good morning. Our proudest legacy will be that of peacemaker.
Peacemaker in the fire. Beautiful. Together with like-minded leaders, we have a voice. Is it safe?
It is safe.
So anyway, I'm not going to go through the rest of that. That is the commercial for, that's the commercial for Melania, the documentary. Melania, the documentary, which people are so excited that like it got like 6% on the tomato meter. Yeah, that's some people who didn't watch it. Because this is pretty funny. You know, folks from the left, like Brooklyn Dad, all excited by the fact that it got 6%. Well, here's CNN reporting about the numbers on Melania.
This documentary is a big success. We're going to get official numbers from Amazon later this morning, but already, according to the projections that are circulating in the film industry, this is the #1 documentary in terms of box office ticket sales in about a decade. This documentary is another example of the red-blue divide. We've seen ticket sales be a whole heck of a lot stronger in Republican stronghold areas than we have in big blue cities, and that was to be expected. This documentary is a big success.
Brian Stelter having to report about how it's the #1 documentary in a decade. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. And that was Mr. Potato himself. That was a big success. It was. Closest theater to is 90 minutes away. Yeah. This one I covered already. This one I don't care about. Do I want to do this? No, let's end on a high note. I like ending on a high note. That was the high note of the eve. That's the high note. That's the highest note I have left. I got some other stuff I'll save in the bin for tomorrow. I got some other good stuff I'll save for the bin tomorrow. Like I said, there was a lot that happened this weekend. I knew I would easily go 3 hours tonight. I was really glad you guys came out and supported because I was like, I don't know, I'm going to keep it under 2.5 hours tonight. All right. I am going to land my plane here. I think it's a good time for me to land the plane. I thank each and every one of you for participating in this show. Whether you're watching after the fact, you're watching during, you're commenting, you're in the live stream, you're in the ghetto. I should check the ghetto, make sure I didn't miss anything there. Because, I don't want to miss any advertisements for Biltong or other valuable stuff that people need. Duckfest says, Joe, we don't kink shame here in the ghetto. Dom loves Anton's meat, and that's okay. He just needs your approval, and he'll stop. His son says, Joe, if I go follow someone knowing they're going to rob a bank and then go and start interviewing people, am I not part of it? Am I a journalist then? Don't know. That's an interesting question. That's an interesting question. Such an interesting question. He asked me that question twice. I think it's possible. Oh, I missed this. Dominion of Dark says, only voting has never in history changed bad government into a good government. You can vote your way into a bad government, but you have to poo-poo your way out of there. Pew, 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 choo, 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 your way out. Choo, 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 choo. That's like me fighting the Cylons with my Battlestar Galactica little photon things. Choo. Because I don't want to make it. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's true. What I would tell you, Dominion After Dark, is tell that to India. Mahatma Gandhi got rid of pretty bad government there. Now they end up getting not such a great government now. Better than what they had. I recognize that the American way has been what you're suggesting. That has been what. But I mean, on an international basis, while that's been effective here, first and foremost, that failed in the 19th century, despite over 1 million American deaths, Civil War. And we've seen other methods be successful. In the UK, there was some fighting along the way and some threats of fighting. The physical revolutions in France were not nearly as effective as some of the reforms that came along later. Although I don't know enough about French history to know what changed that. Germany got, I guess, a healthier government. Not by fighting successfully, but by losing a war. So I think you're just looking at you're romanticizing the Revolutionary War as being like the only time that's ever happened, and that's just not reality. So just because that's what has worked here on this continent doesn't mean that's the only way for that to happen. So, yeah, I'm respectfully disagreeing with your perspective on history. That can work, but I do think that there are other methods of attaining that, short of like, blood in the streets. All right, here's another good one. Have him lay. In recent history, most of the improvements in government, virtually every improvement in government in the last 200 years has not come as a result of war. So look at what happened in Russia, right? They went from they have a better government now than they had in 1980. And that was not as a result of war. That was through voting. In Bukele, we see it happen all the time. We haven't seen it here. Maybe perhaps it's more challenging here, but there's a lot. Yeah, El Salvador is a great example. It's a phenomenal example, actually. We have a much more complex government. It feels like we have a much more complex government than El Salvador had. But yeah, okay. So I think it's time for me. Is it time? Is it time? Well, we're recording on private property, two-party. I don't know enough about that area of law. These all feel like misdemeanor type of material, not felony. But then the FACE Act comes in, and it's kind of weird. So, I haven't really researched the FACE Act and how it's been applied over the last, 3 decades. So it's a little bit it's a little bit to me, it's a very funky law, which feels more like a misdemeanor that became a felony. So, like, it's not supposed to be that the second you do something that feels like relatively minor activity that you're spending, years and years in a prison. See, it feels onerous. Less so with the church than it does with an abortion clinic, but stupid Congress put in such ridiculous protections for abortion clinics. It's just asinine. All right. I was such a good mood because the Melania is opening, and now I'm in murky land again. I was saying I thank you all for joining me, and I hope that you enjoy this as well. And you drop a comment, all that other good stuff. I've been clipping more also. In case you missed stuff, I've been trying to clip more and try and condense down to try and give you some of my better segments in like bite size. So I ask you, it would be really helpful to me, and it'll encourage me to do it more if you just give it like a quick watch and maybe a like and share. And this way I bring people in here. I'm really working harder to developing the channel. I've started to see mild growth for the first time in this channel's history as a result of this, but it's very helpful if you guys can like look for those videos. I'll drop links to them in Locals and on X, and you can find it there if you guys can check them out. And I try to basically make them like more condensed and like less of the ums and more just like fluid, so it moves, and in bite-sized pieces. So this way, in case you don't have 3 hours to watch and you just want to jump in and see like some of the best of my work, it's more digestible for you. So if you guys can check that out, I would appreciate that. Like, share, subscribe, and none of that lab meat garbage, because that's meant for anti-ice meat people. It's not meant for you. And do not eat the bugs. Don't do it. Have a good night, everyone. And as always, Godspeed.